Trees, testing, 1, 2, 3.
She had stopped it, she said.
That's, I see on the screen it says live.
My neighbors in The Hague used to say, she is the cat. They couldn't stand to hear anyone referred to as her or she.
Hello all, just a quick update. You could see we went to live on YouTube, but then the recording stopped. We're trying to reset that right now. Be with you hopefully momentarily.
Thank you. Whew, boy, is it warm today. A good evening to be indoors instead of in the garden.
Hot, huh?
Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So if you just click mute again.
You may start, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very
Thank you
much
for your
All
patience.
right. No, thank you to everybody. All right. It is 6:08 p.m. On May 4th, 2022. I'm calling the meeting of the Transportation and Circulation Commission, City of Lafayette, to order. Let's start with a roll call. I'll call your name and just affirm that you're here. Bart.
I'm here.
Carr. Yeah, that's Bart Carr. Lynn Hedane.
Here.
Greg Brown.
Here.
Stella Weatherspoon.
Here.
And I'm Carl DiGiorgio. Vianney notified us earlier that he wasn't able to attend tonight, regrettably. We also have a quorum. We also have in attendance Drew Parker, Adam Vest, and then city staff Mike Moran and Therese Kane. So let's first, I don't know or have any reasons to change the agenda. Does anyone else? Then motion, please. To adopt.
Motion to adopt the agenda. I second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the agenda is adopted. All right, item 4 on the agenda is public comment. So to remind everyone, this is for public comment only about items that are not on the agenda. And so if you'd like to speak about something, then please use the raise your hand feature and we'll bring you in to hear you. And I don't see any hands raised. Going. All right, gone. All right, let's move on to 5A. This is the second big batch of schools in the safety around schools initiative that the city is following. So I don't know, Mike, if you have comments, but before we do that, I wanted to just talk about the process, my proposed process. I would, my feeling was that we should go through the tables, 1 through 4, in that order, ask clarifying questions of staff and the consultants. If we have any issues with the physical, the actual reports, we can raise those issues. Then I thought we'd go to public comment on all of the school issues, and then bring it back in at that point for commission discussions of items that we might want to add, modify, or remove, if any, going through them each table 1 through 4. And then after that, then we would have a vote on whether we want to recommend those items to the city council for their consideration, including the city council's funding discussions. So my point is, I don't think we want to get too deep into the cost of items. This is very similar to the process we did on the last schools. And I know that when these items go to the city council, there will be an opportunity for public to also address them at that point also. Okay, does any commissioners have any comments on the proposed process? Lynn, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I wanted to know, when we get to each section, can we ask our questions at that time?
So what questions of
division.
staff? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, my idea was we'd go through all the tables.
Consultant.
We'd go through all the tables and ask clarifying questions, we had of staff and consultants. Then we'd go, because some of our questions might help answer things that the public has in mind. And then, so we'll do our questions, then we will, and not make judgments, just questions. Then we'll go to public comment, and then we'll come back and have actual discussions about which items we think should or shouldn't be included, things we want to add or delete, so forth. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, let's get going then. Did you have any comments, Mike, you wanted to talk about?
So I like your process. It's kind of what we learned with the last batch at the second meeting. So thank you for that. I do have, Tool does have kind of a presentation at first that will kind of lead into this, but you do have the tables. That's the gist of really what we're asking for action on. But of course, it's open to the commission to include additional items or to delete any of those items as they see fit. I know there was some public comment that was attached with the packet today that I believe has been sent to all the commissioners. One set of email from the mayor's school, mostly in favor of recommendations already put out there, and one from Burton Valley area, requesting we do none of even the 4 that are recommended there. So just having said that, I welcome Drew and Adam from Tool Design Group to lead us into this discussion.
And Commissioner DeGiorgio, we do have about a 15-minute presentation, but I see we still have a couple of hands up. So in case those are questions first.
Thank you for pointing that out. Lynn, you can lower your hand, and then Greg, what did you want to ask?
Sure. I just want to clarify again, these are the recommendations that we'll be making to City Council at a very soon future meeting that are sort of tier 1 and tier 1.5. But this does not, again, sort of eliminate other potential recommendations. Is that correct?
So that is correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, these are like essentially the quick build items that approach we took in previous schools.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, no,
Thank
that's
you.
a great question.
I
Bart?
had one real quick question. What is the order of schools we're going to handle once we go through the tool presentation?
I was going to follow the order that's in the staff report, which, table 1, 2, 3, and 4. That was Happy Valley, Burton, Mayor, and Accolades.
Okay, thank you.
Recognizing that, there's going to be public comments on table 2, Burton Valley, and there'd be probably a lot of discussion around Accolades High School just because of the sheer number of recommendations.
Right. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Drew.
Okay. I'm going to get started here and share my screen if there's no other business before we start. Are you all able to see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, great. Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Drew Parker. I'm a senior planner from Tool Design. I'm also joined this evening by Adam Best from Tool Design. I'm the project manager for this effort. Adam Best is the principal in charge. And Tool Design is a consulting firm that works with communities to improve their walking and bicycling environments. And we were hired by the City of Lafayette to help you with your school safety plans. I'll give maybe a 10 to 15 minute presentation here that's just going to kind of give an overview of the process, where we are in that process, the schedule for the overall project, the work completed to date, and then moving into the bulk of the presentation will be just a summary of this next set of reports. And then at the end, I'll give a brief review of what the next steps will be. To give a project overview, this project began with a review and evaluation of all of the previous recommendations from previous Safe Routes to School studies and commissioner recommendations and reports. We then went and did school site visits at all 7 schools across the city in the winter and also held stakeholder meetings to understand what people's priorities were about school safety. And the ultimate goal of the project is to provide a set of high priority rapid implementation safety measures and associated cost estimates for each school. So it's really trying to figure out what we can do immediately to make safety improvements. The project started in November of 2021, and we conducted those site visits throughout the winter. And since January, we've been developing the draft recommendations and reports for all 7 schools. And then the ultimate goal is to finalize these reports and have Transcirc and council review complete by the end of June. So as mentioned at the March 2nd and March 29th meetings, we reviewed Stanley Middle School, Lafayette Elementary School, and Spring Hill Elementary School. So tonight we're going to focus on the other 4 schools, which are Happy Valley Elementary, Accolades High School, the Mayher Schools, and Burton Valley Elementary. So just starting with Happy Valley Elementary School, the main issues that we noticed here are that pickup and drop-off queues along Happy Valley Road create long backups and dangerous maneuvers on Happy Valley Road. We observed some drivers going into oncoming traffic to try to pass the queues of people waiting to pick up and drop off. And then we also noticed that visibility at crosswalks could be improved in a couple locations. So as far as the short-term projects, there's 4 key recommendations. And these really focus on trying to improve the visibility of crosswalks and the sight lines at driveways, and also trying to keep people in their lane on Happy Valley Road by installing delineators. And just to show a brief schematic of what that might look like, you may have seen recently that at Spring Hill Elementary on Spring Hill Road, the city installed delineators along the center line that keep people in their lane and prevent them from passing vehicles. So that's the same idea here on Happy Valley Road, that we'd be trying to place delineators strategically along the center lines to keep people in their lane. And here you can see these are the short, mid, and long-term costs that we've estimated for all of the projects that we're recommending, as well as the locations of those projects. And for each school, there's recommendations all around really the neighborhood of that school. So next, moving to Burton Valley Elementary. Currently, there's an ongoing pilot study that's evaluating the new traffic calming elements that were installed in the neighborhood. So our school safety plan is much more focused just on improvements immediately adjacent to the school. And some of the key issues we notice here are that visibility of pedestrians at crosswalks could be improved, and that there's an opportunity to connect the school to the Lafayette Moraga Regional Trail with a more direct route. So as far as the short-term recommendations at Burton Valley Elementary School, these are really simple signing and striping improvements immediately adjacent to the school. The key one being installing in-street yield to pedestrian signs at all of the existing crosswalks. And here you can see this is a summary of the short, medium, and long-term projects at Burton Valley Elementary. And the map on the right, you can see that we're focused primarily on projects that are immediately adjacent to the school. Next, moving to the Maher schools. The main issue that we notice here is Leland Drive has this downhill grade and curves as you're approaching the school and the crosswalks. And so that creates some potential speed and visibility concerns at that crosswalk. Our short-term recommendations here really focus on enhancing the signing and striping around the school, especially at the crosswalks, and just improving that visibility of pedestrians to drivers. Here you can see the short, medium, and long-term costs for all those projects and the location of those projects. In the mid and long term, there are a couple of additional recommendations to add speed humps and a raised crossing to really try to slow drivers down on Leland Drive. There's also recommendations to make improvements at the Pleasant Hill and Condit intersection to make it more comfortable for walking and biking. And then the last of the 4 schools is Accolades High School. And the things that we noticed here, it starts with the street design around the school with Pleasant Hill Road being a really high volume road and a route of regional significance that creates a street design that's oriented much more towards vehicle traffic and not so much towards people walking and biking. And then on Stanley Boulevard, the 2 main issues are the lack of sidewalks on the south side of the street, as well as no pedestrian crossings between Pleasant Hill Road and Camino Diablo. So we have a few short-term recommendations here centered around improving crosswalks, adding new crosswalks at the Camino Diablo intersection with Stanley Boulevard, and making some small operational improvements and enhancing markings to make things function better on Stanley Boulevard. As mentioned by the commissioner, there's quite a few recommendations at Accolades High School. So as you get to the mid and long term, there are a lot of projects that are included, mostly focused on making pedestrian improvements to Stanley Boulevard. So that's a summary of the 4 reports at a high level. As far as next steps for the project, so Transfer will review and prioritize these recommendations tonight. Then it'll move to City Council approval. And then beyond that, city staff will develop a funding and implementation plan that moves the projects into design and construction. And then ultimately, once projects get installed, we recommend that they are evaluated to continue to understand how they function and if minor tweaks need to be made in the future. So that is my presentation at a high level. We can now take questions.
Sorry about that. Why don't you start, Lynn?
Yeah, okay. It's easier for me than trying to get the little hand to work. But first of all, I am wondering, do you have anything to do with the design of that center bike lane down the middle between, or have you had any input on that? How would we make a comment on that? Because I have a major question about that.
Okay, so to take a time out and I want to remind all the commissioners and also the public and staff, when we're talking about items, where possible, to please use the codes that are associated with the staff reports tables. And so I think in your case, Lynn, you're talking about the
Eric Law's
yeah, that would be item AC 26.
1826.
AC like Accolades.
AC 26.
AC 26.
Okay, I just have a question about that. And by the way, Drew might want to know, it's called the Accolades Union High School District, so that you know what abbreviation to use in your reports. Okay, regarding the AC 26, the bike lane would go down the center. I presume there would be K-rail on either side. We have a very active, what would we call it? Off-ramp anyway, emptying from westbound 680 and then on to 24. I guess, I don't know if we're taking, I think, yeah, we are. We're off of 24, coming down onto Pleasant Hill Road. And I'm wondering, it's obvious how cars would get to Pleasant Hill Road in their travels to the north, but what happens to the people who come off that off-ramp? And there are many of them who do that.
Hey, Lynn,
Say, wait, please, let me finish, please. Can I finish?
I think
There are people who, a lot of people who live on Release Valley Road and on Spring Hill, and they don't turn right. They turn left, go down the tunnel and so they can get out of that ramp, so they're not going to be rear-ended. We've had people killed doing that. So how are we going to get the people who want to turn left and make a U at Tunnel Road and head north? How are we going to get them through the bike lane?
If I could just interject,
That's a very important question, Carl.
Drew will answer that, but first I was hoping to start with the table one, but that project has already been endorsed, and I think they listed it in this table because it's an ongoing project. They wanted to keep it in our mind's eye, but Drew or Mike can respond to that.
But it's a key question, and it said, I saw.
So Lynn, please let me answer, because we don't have 10 minutes to waste on this. I will say this. First of all, they'll still be able to make that same U-turn you're talking about. Second of all, this is being designed. This is being designed by another consultant. We got some earmarked funding from Rebecca Bauer-Cahan's office, through that office, to design it. There will be public meetings showing schematics for that within probably the next 2 or 3 months. So look for that to ask those questions. Because for now, as Chair DeGiorgio said, it's noted because it is something we're pursuing, but it's not something we can get down in the weeds on tonight.
Okay. Greg, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I have a question on the Accolades report. So
Okay.
Carl, I don't know if you want to go by order or what.
Let's just go ad hoc.
Okay, so on the Accolades report, and this is for Tool primarily, because Mike, I have a couple questions later just about the choice of recommendations, but just with respect to Accolades, I'm a little bit confused by AC 6 and AC 10. Are they the same thing? Because they appear quite similar, and then I don't see an AC 6 in the on the map. And so I think they're, well, I'll stop there.
Before we get farther, would Mike or Drew want to put the staff report up so we can show these items on the screen? Would that be useful or not?
So I think at this time, it might be better that we might be going with a part of the tool report. Drew, maybe I'll leave that to you. And then when we get to going through the staff report table one by one, I'm happy to share that and go along and keep track.
That's
if
great.
that
Thank
makes
you.
sense.
Okay, so sorry, Greg. Do you want to restate your concern just so?
I understand what Greg is getting at here. There are two different crosswalks. So there's one recommended to the east side of the exit only driveway, which is, there's two drivers. There's the west one and an east one. The west one is exit only. The east one is enter only. And so the AC6 is for the exit only driveway, and AC10 is for the enter only driveway. So like the enter only driveway is where the bus picks up and drops off that bus pullout over there. So it is actually two separate recommendations.
Okay. All right. Yeah, you're right. Now I do see 6. It was hard to pick up with the font. So, okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Who else has questions about these items from a, for Drew or for Mike?
You're talking about only the Accolades items?
No, I think we'll just, at this point, we can just go through them ad hoc. I've got questions on several of the different tables. But let's just start with table 1. I have a question then for Mike and for Drew. HV1 in the tables in the actual report is not shown in table 1, and I was wondering if that item HV1 had been combined with another item, or there was a reason why it was left off the table.
So Mike can explain more, but yeah, Mike wanted to advance I think it's HV6. So the HV1 is sort of a temporary one with paint and post. So building a curb extension just using delineators and
I see.
Pavement markings. And so, yeah, Mike, if you want to take it from there.
Yeah, and the reason we couldn't just do the paint and sticks at that location is because I will be forced to do a concrete ramp at that location anyway. And if I'm doing concrete work, it makes no sense not to just bulb it out as part of that work. So to improve that crosswalk at all, we are required to put a concrete ramp there. Therefore, we would do the midterm recommendation at this.
I understand. Okay. Shall I keep going? Anybody else? Raise your hand. On table 2, which is the Burton Valley School, and I know that when we come back, we're going to talk about, we need to talk about what actions, if any, to take on this on table 2. But I had a question about some technical questions. So on BV, Burton Valley 1, item 1, it talks about moving the stop head sign. And this is based on the Safe Trek report. And I went back and reread the Safe Trek report for that section. It talked about moving it west, which they titled as upstream. And I was curious about the distance between that stop ahead sign, and I believe the stop sign is actually the Marywood stop to the east. So I was curious to know, wouldn't it make more sense if you want to get it out of the intersection to avoid confusion? Wouldn't it make more sense to just move it slightly east towards Marywood? Maybe you can help me understand that thinking.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And Adam might be better suited to answer this question as a traffic engineer, but there's 2 competing messages in the same location with the pavement markings and the signage.
Right.
And so I'm not exactly sure. We'd have to look a little more closer at that location as to why it couldn't be moved to the east. My guess is because then it's too close to the stop sign itself to post a stop ahead sign. But yeah, Adam, I don't know if you have other opinions on it.
And again, so Adam hasn't. I don't know if Adam's seen how I act, but how I work. But I'm okay with leaving that up to staff at an engineering portion to kind of think it through. I just wanted to point that out as a concern. I just didn't understand it. So, okay.
Okay.
For BV2, and this is a general question kind of regarding all crosswalks and the idea of having yield to pedestrian signs. In the case of BV2, if you look, for example, at Reed Drive, REED, Reed Drive, that's kind of an uphill segment, and there's a stop sign and a crosswalk, right? And so I wasn't sure. So is the intention on these to just add signs to the existing stop signs, or do they have to have a new sign that's kind of in the middle of the crosswalk? Can you help me understand that?
Yeah, the in-street yield to pedestrian signs go in the middle of the crosswalk on the center line of the roadway. And so it's just an additional indication to drivers that this is a place where you need to yield to
I get it.
pedestrians.
That's the kind of, so it's actually mounted on the street in the center of the, okay, I
Right.
was confused. Okay. Thank you. That makes sense. Then let's see. On Accolades High School table, so this is AC1. Now this is a school item, but it's just little plastic bollards in the middle of the, those two lanes is all we're asking for. Is that right?
That's the recommendation, yeah, to keep people from making a left turn from the right turn lane
Okay.
by putting a physical barrier in front of them.
Okay. On AC6, it talks about adding a raised crosswalk with RRFBs. That's those the signs, the flashing beacons. And I was wondering, from an implementation standpoint, I think I know the answer, but would you always do the work at one time because you have to have wires going under the street, or would you ever do the RRFBs first and then come back and do the raised crosswalks later? Mike?
So most of our RRFBs are actually solar and wireless, so that we're avoiding that wire under the street. So it is possible to do those in separate phases.
Okay. On AC7, at the last sentence, it says add optional delineators along the north edge. And this has to do with the, some restriping and stuff. And in that area, I was concerned, I want to understand, would adding delineators impact bicycle traffic? Would that pose an additional danger to bicyclists?
I wouldn't say so. The goal in that project is to shift vehicle traffic away from the sidewalk, which is rather narrow. And there's been a lot of concern expressed from residents about how uncomfortable it feels to walk on that sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
Given the amount of space between the curb and the delineators and what we're proposing, it wouldn't be enough space for a bicycle to squeeze through there, really. And so I don't see the delineators posing any hazard to bicyclists, whether they're on the sidewalk or in the street.
Okay, all right. Those were my initial questions in terms of technical questions. Lynn, you have a question?
Yeah, on about the Roar Drive signing, I was wondering, you're proposing center signs yield to pedestrians.
Sorry.
Did
Lynn,
you actually look at that?
Lynn, do you have a number for that?
Oh, Burton Valley 2.
Okay.
The ones that Carl was mentioning. Did you actually go out there and look? Did you see how narrow those lanes are? Is there actually room for a sign like that?
Yeah, those signs are pretty narrow, and there's a few already in the city. I mean, we saw them on Happy Valley Road. They're mounted directly on the center line, and they're narrower than the double yellow striping. So they're less than 6 inches wide.
No, I mean the lanes, the travel lanes are very narrow on Roar Drive. Did you notice how narrow the lanes are to be putting a sign in the middle?
I didn't notice anything different. I think maybe they're 10-foot lanes, but this wouldn't impact the width of the travel lanes.
I don't know if they're even 10 feet. And a question on timing. Do you need these 4 done right away, or can they wait?
I would defer that question to Mike.
That's really a question for the
Do you need these right away, or can they wait? Because this is taking the neighborhood by surprise.
Understood, and I'm sure we'll get some public comment on that later. I would leave that for your deliberation after going through which of the items you would like to, forward on to the council for funding and which maybe you wouldn't.
Okay. Bart, you had your hand up.
Well, I would like an answer to this first.
I'm sorry. I thought that was my fault.
So, but is there any rush for these 4 is what I'd like to know. Are they really critical?
of the four, and half of one is the bike lane at the path, or the bike gate at the path. I think I would do
Are you
that
talking
one,
about my path or some other path?
the path off of Sandalwood. So
BV
sorry, that would
5.
be the BV5. That is one that staff plans to do regardless. It's off the road entirely. It's more for the bicycle users of Burton Valley Elementary School.
Who owns that path anyway?
Actually, the city does. I confirm that.
Huh. So you can do that, not even as part of this project, really. Just ordinary city procedure.
Yes, it could be a work order, right?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Is that good, Lynn?
So far.
Okay, Bart?
First of all, Chair DeGiorgio, I liked your idea at the very beginning of going by table and focusing on each school as we went through the tables. But I guess now we're doing ad hoc, which means we're sort of jumping around between schools, and that's a little bit harder for me to follow. But
Yeah, I went through them in order.
if we're doing
sorry.
ad hoc now, I guess that's the way it is, right?
Well, why don't you go through them in your order?
Okay, well, I want to go through them in the groups order, but anyway, I have some comments and comments on Happy Valley. I'll start there. First of all, with project ID HV2, which is trimming a hedge that obstructs sight lines. I was out at Happy Valley earlier today, and even with the map, I couldn't find where that hedge was that required trimming. So I'm just curious, whose property is that hedge on? Is that school property? Is that private property? Is that public roadway, adjacent to public roadway?
It's private property, hence the note to notify the property owner and maybe have a discussion with them.
Okay, I was using the tool report, so I didn't see that note. Okay, and then going to HV3, I noticed that, which talks about turning the parking lane in front of the school that is currently signed, well, turning it into a pickup drop-off and is currently signed no parking. I only saw no parking signs on one side of the main crosswalk that's directly in front of the school. And I believe, I was a little bit confused by what north, south, east, west, but I believe that's south of the crosswalk. On the other side of the crosswalk, you just have cars parked. And it occurred to me at that time that it would make sense to extend the pickup drop-off to that other side of the crosswalk and remove some parking. And I was wondering whether that could be considered.
Absolutely. That is the intention of the recommendation, is that all of that, what is currently on-street parking or no parking, just becomes formally pickup and drop-off area. And then it could be parking outside of pickup and drop-off times.
Okay, I thought
That's definitely the recommendation.
Okay, good. Well, thank you for that clarification. Then on HV6, talking about adding a bulb out to straighten the crosswalk and improve sight lines. Are we talking about the crosswalk directly in front of the school?
This is the crosswalk of the westernmost driveway. So it's where people come in to the west side of the school and into that loop to pick up and drop off.
On Happy Valley.
Yeah.
Road.
So it's not the crossing of Happy Valley, it's the crossing of that driveway that's parallel to Happy Valley Road.
Okay, I didn't understand that. All right, thank you. And then on HV7, and I'm sorry, I don't know what a paint and post curb extension is. Can someone explain to me what that is?
Thank you for asking that.
Yeah, so that would be, so a curb extension is typically at corners, but it can also be in a mid-block location. Essentially, so because you have a parking lane along Happy Valley Road, you can delineate the space by the crosswalk using flex post delineators and striping to basically carve out that space where people can wait to cross the crosswalk a little bit further, basically standing in the parking lane instead of standing at the sidewalk. And so the paint and post is just, it's something we can do really quickly by striping what the extent of that area would be and putting delineators instead of actually building it in concrete,
Okay.
which takes quite a bit longer.
Okay. So paint and post is essentially adding paint to the pavement and putting those delineator posts to really identify that crossing, the start of that.
Right. Almost to simulate where a new curb line would be.
Okay.
And prevent cars from getting into that space.
Okay, great. Thank you. That clears that up. Those are all my questions for Happy Valley, and I'll wait for the other school. So I'm good now.
Okay, Greg?
I'll pause. I just have one on Burton Valley, but I'll wait if we want to finish
Okay.
Happy.
Is there anybody else that wants to ask questions about table 1, which is the Happy Valley Elementary School? Okay, I don't see anybody hands raised. We can come back to that. So table 2, the Burton Valley, Greg?
Yeah, I just had a question. So on BV5, the trail we were just talking about, I went back and looked at the Safe Trek report, and it's about 4 pages of discussion on this. And just to clarify, the proposal would be to basically implement the recommendations as were set forth in the Safe Trek report.
Correct.
Okay, and then that's basically all just on that trail between Sandalwood and the school.
There would be some striping in the street at the crosswalk, but it wouldn't change anything in the operations or how the street functions.
Okay, thank you.
Lynn?
Yeah, this doesn't remove any parking either on Sandalwood, does it?
No.
It didn't look like it to me.
No, it wouldn't remove any parking. I believe there's currently striping in the area where the parking is restricted in advance of the crosswalk anyways. So this would just be painting the curbs red in that area to further enhance that.
How many feet would that be, would you say, approximately?
20 feet, which is about 1 car length.
And it's not in front of anyone's house.
It's all, well, they're all residential properties right there. So it is in front of
There's some
houses.
people there who have trouble getting around, and we wouldn't want to red curb something that they needed in front of their garage or access to their house. That's what I'm concerned about. There were no hearings on this at all.
It wouldn't create any issues like that. It is just a crosswalk visibility thing so that people aren't parked right in front of their crosswalk and blocking the sight lines of people being able to see if a kid is waiting to cross in their crosswalk.
I see. I personally think that we should hold on the other 2, maybe leave the Sandalwood as a city project that they could do anytime anyway if they wanted to. But I think I wouldn't act on the other 2. I would keep our word. I think we owe the neighborhood an apology because we startled them, and they had received a letter, and it was all had settled with regard to the pilot project. And I personally would thank them myself on behalf of the commission, but I think we should hold on these 2.
I'm going to say what numbers?
And maybe act on the others, but not the top 2. Since we need to really be careful and evaluate what we put in the middle of that road anyway, because we have changed the parameters on the sides of the street. And I was quite frankly stunned out of my wits that Sia was able to get the spacing on road drives that he was able to. But I would think twice or maybe 4 times before I put something in the middle of that.
Lynn, we wanted to
I
just
don't know.
ask technical questions at this point and then come back for the discussion part. Is that okay?
Okay, all right, okay.
Right.
So, so I have my, I
Okay.
have my answers then for,
Are there other,
Sandalwood, thank you.
okay, are there other questions about the table 2 Burton Valley? Bart?
Maybe a quick one. In the tool report, you have a BV4, which is not in this report. And I assume that was removed not to interrupt the pilot study. Is that why that's not here now?
Yeah, that's correct.
Mike
Mike, I
should-
don't know if
I
you
assume-
want to
Yeah.
add
no,
anything.
Thank you.
What,
No, yeah, that is correct.
could you repeat what that was? What did he just, what was he referring, what were you referring to, Bart?
BV4, which was adding a raised crosswalk, I believe. And it alludes to the pilot study, and I assume that's removed not to disturb or interrupt the pilot study, not to influence the pilot study. So that's not here now.
I don't think there is anything printed for a pilot study. Do we have any data printed for a pilot study?
No, it just in the tool
the-
report, it refers to the pilot study for that one project. And my assumption is that is not being considered now because we don't want to influence, because of the neighborhood's concern, we don't want to influence the pilot study. So that's not there anymore. So we shouldn't consider it. It's not there anymore. That's what
So it's not a consideration that was put forward tonight because of the pilot study. We already have speed humps in the area, and those raised crosswalks affect, act in a similar way, basically.
Yeah. In the tool report, it's classified as a midterm and medium priority. I think for that reason. Any other questions about Burton Valley? Okay, let's move on to table 3, which is the mayor schools. I'm sorry, I went through some of this already, but questions on the table 3. Lynn?
Yeah, I would like to ask our pool folk. I was very concerned when I saw the pictures of the kids riding on the wrong side of the street, riding their bicycles. They obviously have no knowledge of the motor vehicle report or what side of the street they've been riding on, and they were surprised that the cars were driving in the middle of the street while they're going on the wrong side of the street, and the cars are coming at them in turns and confronting them when they shouldn't be where they were. Kids are being turned loose on bicycles, and they're not being taught to ride on the correct side of the street, and they have to stay to the right. And when we let the kids go on the left side of the street and put our trails on the left side of the street, they get very confused. And I've said before, and I want to say again, we shouldn't be doing that. They get confused. I mean, you saw the picture yourself. That's the way kids get killed. They would be ticketed if they were in Holland. We've got to stop that somehow. There is no, I drove down there, that the conduit is very narrow. I had forgotten, we used to live in that neighborhood. I'd forgotten how narrow those streets were and how we ever let our roads deteriorate in that area the way we did. You can hardly see the lines, which is a tragedy. So we got to do something. And there is a signal there. The kids do appear to be able to get across the street, but to keep them, it's amazing that so many of them are still alive with a narrow street like that and so few signs, so few lines, I guess I should say. They've got to get over to Stanley, a lot of these kids. They don't know how to ride properly. We've got to do something and more than what we're doing here.
So Lynn, maybe I could follow up. So to your point, a question I had about ME9, which is the Conduit Drive, Pleasant Hill, basically area. Does the refresh the lane lines and add delineators of some curves, would that also include bike churros or something to indicate to kids bicycling that they should be on one side of the street? Is that something that would be useful to.
Not
Lynn's
just
point.
should be, must be. Their lives depend on this.
So I'm wondering if Drew or Mike can answer that.
So I think there's two separate things going on. I think the issue with the wrong way riding is at Condit Drive, when it gets to Pleasant Hill Road, there's no crossing on the north side of that intersection. And so kids cross to the south side and ride the wrong way so that they can use the pedestrian signal to cross on the south side. So ME7 actually addresses that by recommending to add a crossing on the north side, which would make it more conventional. You know, and like most intersections have crosswalks on all legs, but this one happens to not have crosswalks on the north side. As far as refreshing the lane lines and adding the delineators, the amount of space between where the fog line or the delineators and the curb line is not enough to put an actual bike lane. It's not wide enough. In some places it gets a little bit wider, but in some places it's 1 foot, which is not enough to have a bike lane. So you could add sharrows in the motor vehicle travel lane. But as far as putting a bike lane symbol, I don't think there's enough space to have a conventional bike lane, which typically you want at a bare minimum 4 feet, better 5 or 6 feet.
I didn't mean to suggest a bike lane. Sorry, I was just merely, you know.
No. I just meant, I think if we were to add that, it would probably, I'm just saying it would probably be shared lane markings like a sharrow.
Would you, what are our chances that we all, or you on your report, can up the urgency of getting that push button mechanism across Pleasant Hill Road on the other side? They shouldn't be doing what they're doing. It's very dangerous.
So if I could weigh in a little bit.
I would like to change the ranking.
Yeah. So Lynn,
that is urgent.
The bicyclists, especially a junior high school bicyclists, it's a tough intersection and the road is narrow at Condit heading towards Pleasant Hill Road westbound on a bike. Mostly though, they're in the wrong side because they're going a diagonal and they're going the shortest way to get to where they want to go. They could stay on the north side of Condit and stop and and cross twice. There is a crosswalk and a traffic signal to cross Condit and then cross Pleasant Hill Road. It's just they would have to do an L. But if you're a bicyclist and you're 11 years old, you're never going to do an L if you can just go straight diagonal to where you want to go, which is a dangerous thing, particularly since you can't always see the right turns and somebody may be coming in a little too fast off of Pleasant Hill Road onto Condit. I don't personally believe that adding sharrows is going to change that behavior, and I would question if adding sharrows would make it safer with those exact conditions. It's really unfortunate that that is as narrow as it is there, because it would be good to have bike lanes at least on both sides of that.
I would like
I do believe that, yeah.
I would
Go
like
ahead.
to have enforcement, and I would like to have the push buttons on the other side of the street. And we teach the kids what to do and we make them do it. That's what our police and our parents are for.
So I understand the enforcement part. As far as the push button on the other side of the street, it is a mid or longer term project, and it's not painting paint. I've got to cut through a center median and add 2 different ramps. It's $100,000. So I'm not saying a kid's life isn't worth $100,000. I'm saying they have a safe route if they took it right now. And when you weigh that against some of these other things, it's not a quick install.
I disagree. I think it is a quick install. You haven't seen a kid who's 7 years old in a casket.
Right. So I want to refocus on technical questions about these items. Any other questions on the mayor's schools items? Okay, let's move to table 4,
Okay.
which is, oh, so sorry, I was looking down.
Yeah, no problem. I just wanted to acknowledge the letter, and I think we're all aware of it, obviously, the letter that we received from the mayor school board chair, and basically backing projects 1 through 6, and then saying that they'd be responsible for some trimming of vegetation, and then they add some a request on timing of the work. So I just think it's important that we recognize that, as I'm sure we will have done. That's it. Thank you.
No, thank you. Stella?
Yeah, just one point on, trying to track it here, ME3, that I think we also had discussed at the walkabout, that the vegetation around that curve is pretty dense and that it needs trimming. So that was something that I think should be part of this project.
So I will just add that it already is, and I had that conversation with that board member from the school, and they acknowledged, we talked about trimming and pruning, not just at the very specific place that it was recommended, but around that corner as well. And
Oh,
they
okay,
understand. So just to let you know, that has already been discussed, and they are already on board with doing that.
Oh, okay. I thought that curve was residential, private residential property, because it's further down from the school. But in any event, if we can flip it up, that'll be great. Thank you.
Right. Lynn, you had a,
Yeah, you had, I think it's on the other, I don't see it here. You had a situation where there were 4 stops should have been and weren't ever installed, and we need to put those in. I don't see those here, but they are in the report itself. I mean, in the.
I think it's ME2, Lynn. ME2, Meek Place at Sunset Loop. Is that where you're referring to?
No, they
Meek
were the
Place at Sunset
two
Loop?
convergence of the two. What is it? Wait a second. I can find it. Hold on. Go ahead with something else and I'll find it.
well, after we do table 4, we'll do public comment, we'll come back, and so we can ask questions about that at that time, I think.
There's a picture of it too.
Okay, let's move on to table 4, Accolades High School. Who would like to go first on questions?
Sunset Loop and Sunset Loop, those two. They need a 4-way stop sign on all of them. Very dangerous.
Okay. Right. Bart, Bart or Stella, did you have concerns or anything you want to talk about on table 4?
Let me take a quick look, but another commissioner can feel free to go ahead.
I've asked mine already, so.
I have one on AC3. That's a yellow ladder crosswalk marking across the driveway to Springbrook Pool, Akalani's overflow parking area. I think that I'm pretty certain the school owns the parking lot. They own that strip of land. So is this a school responsibility driveway marking, or is it city? I guess it depends where you put it.
So that's how I'm going to answer. I think it could be
Okay.
either the school does own that. It could just as easily be listed as the school maintenance responsibility. At some point, we're going to have discussions with both school districts on what's ours and what's theirs and what they'd like to implement.
Okay, now that makes sense. There was one item, let's see if I can find it, that was just I think a correction. Oh, it's not in the tool report. It's in the staff report. The item AC27. It's not relocating bike racks, but it's actually getting some new ones and installing them. So just to be clear, they have bike racks over by their gym, but it's all the way on the east side of the parking lot. And so this location, the Performing Arts Center, is on the west edge, and it's convenient for students who bike from Ridley's Valley, Spring Hill Road, Quant, etc. So keeps them from having to cross the whole parking lot with their bikes.
Thank you. That was probably my mistake, and I've just corrected the table to add it. So meaning we'd have bike locker, bike racks at both locations. Right.
Yeah, and that was something that Commissioner Brown and I discussed with the principal a long time ago, back in the fall, and he was interested in the idea. So that's something that's already come up, and hopefully, just like the Lafayette district, they'll find that it's fairly easy to procure. Okay, thank you. Let me see if there's anything else question wise. Yeah, no, I don't have any other questions right now.
Okay, Greg?
Mike, on AC 11, the proposal to build a sidewalk and then the crosswalk and RRFBs. I know we talked about that on the walkabout, with a large group of folks. I guess just one question in terms of the timing on that, in terms of easements with EdMud, et cetera. Is this realistically a fast track project, or is this, you just want to get it out there for approval and set a marker and start working on it?
So thank you for bringing that up. It's exactly as you just said. It will take some more time. We will probably need an encroachment agreement with East Bay Mud for the different use. If they allow it, I tend to think they would. We have a road over that, right of way that's East Bay Mud's. But this is adding sidewalk. They get very sensitive to any construction over their aqueduct. It would be concrete that we would pour just so you wouldn't be vibrating asphalt, for example, or compacting asphalt, because they don't want that over their aqueducts. So it will take some time. That is not something that I would envision, will be in place when kids go back to school in August. It'll take longer than that. So thanks for bringing.
Lynn?
Yeah, I wonder if we have a board member of East Bay Mud who grew up in Lafayette, and he's still there. He's been there for many years. I wonder if we gave him a call, if he could help us persuade East Bay Mud to do this work themselves. Is this something that you think we could interest them in doing, Mike?
We have no chance of interesting them in doing this, but I do think they'll probably be cooperative and let us do it.
And why would they not be interested?
Why would they? They have a 200-year pipe replacement plan for their pipes as is, and the life of a pipe isn't 200 years. Right. They don't have the funding to keep up with their own maintenance. That's why. This is a cost. And if you look at this, this is the highest single cost recommendation on any of these four tables. So that's why we want it. It would be for our public use and our school children. I think they would probably go along with allowing it, but they're going to say, please pay for it. And they're going to also put restrictions on what we can do and how we can do it.
Okay.
And that is their right. I mean, they've been very cordial, and I don't think we need to go through political means. We would just go through an encroachment permit request and start.
Stella.
Yeah, tell me if this is the right part. I think these are just technical questions, but I can also defer them till the discussion. I'm curious to know from Mike about projects AC 16, 17, and 19, which are in the tool report, but not in the staff report. They're all pretty generic. Advanced limit lines for foot before crosswalks, school zone ladder crosswalk, and adjust signal timing to reduce wait times. Is there a reason why you omitted them from your report?
So the signal timing we've looked at, the the adjustments for striping, it may be an oversight, or it may be because I want to see what we do in conjunction with all the other recommendations, if those are all put in place, how everything would work together.
Okay, so
is the ladder
19
crosswalk,
is
I'm sorry, is the ladder crosswalk at Pleasant Hill Road at Deer Hill? I mean,
it's not a ladder right now. It's just the two yellow stripes.
right. So as far as that intersection, it's because there is slated to be a development there that's going to completely change that intersection. So I was deferring things that may be incorporated as part of that and just trying to do the other things.
Okay.
However, a striping could certainly be done, and you know, no matter what happens there, it will take a long time also. I'm open to including that as well, but I think that was probably my thinking at the time, Stella.
Okay, that's helpful. But yeah, if there is yellow paint on the road, a truck with yellow paint on the road, then they could be enlisted to do those crosswalks, even if they're just a temporary, short term. Okay. I think I have a question about two others. So AC 24, I'm guessing is in that same category, which is the southwest corner and extending the sidewalk. That's because there would be considerable amount of development happening and construction happening there.
Right. And
Okay.
there's no real, it doesn't go anywhere from that corner, right? You're on the weeds basically. So until there is, that's why.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Let's see. And then AC, the AC 25, that one, I think maybe when we get to discussion, I'll bring up some ideas about that one. But in terms of clarification, I think maybe now that's it. Thank you.
Bart?
Yeah, I've just got a question or a clarification for AC 8, AC 7, excuse me, AC 6, AC 7, and AC 8. Those are all treatments on Stanley Boulevard that are pretty much in one after the other, going along Stanley. And as I interpret these, it's a raised crosswalk with RFBs, restriping the roadway to change orientation, travel orientation, and then speed humps. All of these are basically going to act to manage traffic, calm traffic. Is that sort of what we're trying to accomplish with those three treatments, one after the other? Is that, and I understand that because obviously I can see the traffic, especially traffic coming down Stanley heading towards Pleasant Hill Road, is going pretty quickly. Is that the goal here?
That is the intention, yeah. It's really a package of projects that they could all be done together, or they're included separately because they have slightly different purposes, but exactly as you said it, together their goal is to calm traffic on Stanley Boulevard and thereby increasing yield and compliance at crosswalks and at the new crosswalk that we're recommending.
Because there is some redundancy in doing all of these. Is the intent to do all of them? They're all midterm. One is high and the other are medium priority. Is the intent to do all of them or to pick and choose?
The intent is to do all of them. Yeah.
Okay. And then on AC 9, I just have a question. I'd just like you to expand on that. It seems expensive to again, do some vegetation trimming, and then the fence there, it looks like it's a very old fence and it's probably on private property. So what's the intent with that and why is the cost so much?
So it's not on private property. We actually have quite a bit of right of way on that south side of Stanley. But what we also have is a cliff, and to build anything like a sidewalk over there, you would need substantial retaining walls, and the couple of homes that are there, you'd have some very difficult grade breaks to get cars in and out of driveways. Basically, I think you're working around a tree there too, and the intent is not to relocate a whole fence. It would just, if we build the crosswalk there, we want to improve the line of sight to it as much as we can, even if that is a tapering of the last 15 feet or 20 feet in front of the crosswalk, so that if you have someone queued at the side of the road to cross it, you're able to see that if you're a car that's driving eastbound, from Pleasant Hill Road towards that pedestrian crossing. It's
So
just to improve visibility. And honestly, until we're right there doing it and out there, the cost is kind of a placeholder, if you will.
Okay. But the reason why the cost is so high is this is associated or connected to putting in a sidewalk on that side of Stanley. Is that correct?
The sidewalk with the crosswalk.
With the
And I would just say now that we would not put that crosswalk there if we don't build the sidewalk, because then it doesn't go to or from anywhere on one side of it. So.
Okay. And then I noticed, I was out there today and I noticed, I saw both cars exiting the one exit, well, both entering and exiting the parking lot. And while there were some pedestrians on, including myself, on the sidewalk, and I didn't remember seeing anywhere where there would be a crosswalk placed at the entry and the exit points for the parking lot. And I'm wondering that, especially, and I wasn't there during, times when students are arriving or they're departing. I was there mid-morning. I'm wondering if we need to have that the crossing there made more visible. And is that, did I just miss that somewhere in the tool report?
I think you might be referring to AC 30, add marked crosswalks within the parking lot. That's a general. If you mean across the entrances and exits across those driveways, is that what you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
That one is,
I think that it's covered in that then.
Yeah,
It's in AC 30.
Okay. All right.
AC 29 is the across the driveways, and then AC 30 is crosswalks within the parking lot. So there's two separate line items.
And I guess that would be something the school would need to do.
Yes.
All right. Okay, thank you.
All right, Lynn.
Yeah, I didn't see anywhere for parking, car parking for the kids, and they are vastly underparked. They are always, these kids are getting tickets before the terraces became a factor. The other option was going to provide a parking area for the Kalani's kids. My son was always getting tickets trying to park his car. Is there, and now you'll be removing some more parking where you referred to the fence and so on the south side. Where are the kids, the overflow parking, where there's not room anymore on school property to park? Where are they supposed to park?
So they're going to park the same place they're parking today. And I don't know where that is. It might be further up Camino Diablo. It might be further into a neighborhood. I don't know what the amount of overflow is, Lynn.
You said you're taking some parking away from the south side.
We would be in front of the East Bay Mud Aqueduct. I believe we could actually build that sidewalk and leave some of the parking that's there and remove 3 or 4 of them, because it's actually wide enough there and the topography works where you could build a sidewalk and still have some shoulder parking just like it is now. If we can put the sidewalk further back right against that fence that East Bay Mud has there. But again, that would be something to work out with East Bay Mud Aqueduct Division.
Stella?
Yeah, could I just let Commissioner Hedane know that there's currently capacity for street parking on Camino Diablo, as well as on Stanley on the north side of the street. And so I've never seen, in my experience, there being it at full capacity.
Bart, I didn't mean to cut you off earlier. Were you done with your line of questioning?
On AC 21, I just wanted to understand that better, changing the turning lanes. If someone could help me out with that.
Yeah, so currently the the way that approach works on Stanley Boulevard coming up to Pleasant Hill Road is there's a right turn lane, a through lane, and 2 left turn lanes. Is that correct, Mike? If I'm remembering correctly, when we were out there in the field.
So that is, there's 3 lanes there, and the far left turns left, the middle lane goes left or straight,
Right.
and the far right turns only right. This would make the far right turn right and go straight, and both of the 2 left turns, both of the 2 left lanes would only go left. So rather than going straight from the middle lane, you'd go straight from the right lane. As far as the alignment of that intersection right now, if you're going straight from the middle lane, you have to drift a little to the right to get your alignment across the street. If we were to switch it to where it's through from the right lane, you'd have to drift a little to the left to get your alignment across the street. The purpose of that is to maybe allow some more vehicles to queue up and more fully utilize that right turn lane during the high capacity event when everybody's, flooding out of the parking lot in the afternoon. Because right now what happens is you might get 1 or 2 cars there, and then you get more cars waiting to get to the left and the through. So we're hoping to redistribute where everybody needs to go and fully utilize 3 lanes. And it's something that can be done. You don't even need to change the signal function because it's a 4-directional, because there's 2 left lanes. Everybody that's headed westbound goes westbound at the same time. So there would be no conflict there.
It just seemed to me the way it currently is configured that it's more intuitive for drivers rather than what's being proposed here.
So it may be if you're out on Pleasant Hill Road or across the street. If you're actually driving on Stanley right now, in the right lane, there's a through and a right turn, and then you've got to drift to the left to get to the arrow that tells you to go left or straight. In other words, I'm moving to the left. So it's actually a little confusing the way it is striped right now. It's striped that way for a reason, because there's a severe jog there to widen out the lanes. So it could be either. And then certainly up for deliberation. It's easy to do nothing at that location. It's just something that was suggested that may improve. This is maybe one of the things that may improve vehicle flow out of there that we were looking at, and hence some confusion. It may reduce some confusion, and it may just alleviate some of the heated congestion with 16-year-old drivers coming out of a parking lot.
Okay, all right.
And honestly, we don't know how successful that would be or not. This would be, a striping project per se.
A pilot project.
Well, just to add on, so if or when the Terraces project is built and they're going to reconfigure that intersection, that would be another opportunity to change striping there, because they will have different striping on Deer Hill Road, across the street. So that's just a note that I think for now this is, I think, a good test, but we'll come back and talk about this some more. Okay, Lynn.
Yeah, I called Portland today. On the back, I didn't get around to the pictures on the back of the packet until very late this afternoon. But I noticed that the various different center line pathways, bikeways, that they're recorded by pictures there. And the only one that I could get through to at that time was Portland. So I asked how their center bike lane was doing, and they said it was very popular. It was well used, but they're having to redo the ingress and the egresses, how to get on and how to get off. They had a diagram much like ours, and that didn't work out at all for them. So they're having to redo it and redesign it, and I don't know what they're doing. I talked to the engineering department, the traffic engineering department, and I talked to one of their traffic engineers. But you might want to know that before you start working on it, maybe talk to their traffic engineers and find out
I'm
what
sorry.
went
So,
haywire.
Lynn, are you talking about a specific item number?
I'm talking about the pictures in the back of the packet
Mhm.
and the Eric Law Center two-way
So you're
Bike
talking about AC 26 again. So, okay.
in front of
Right.
Accolades High School.
okay. So, all right. So we won't be
There's
doing
several.
anything.
I'm going to call all of them, except I'm not going to call Korea. Or
Okay.
I think it was Korea. Is that what it was?
Okay.
Unless
So are-
somebody will give me the telephone number.
Okay, so are there other kind of technical questions or questions about emissions or anything on the Accolades table? Okay, then I think that what we should do is, I think we should go to public comment. And the public comment will be on all of the tables, which is basically all of the staff reports. And then after we get public comment, then we're going to come back and talk about what to do. So we'll be listening to comments, as the people make them, and we'll take note of that and we'll discuss it later. Okay. So if you are in the audience and you would like to talk about these projects or these items, please raise your hand and then Therese will bring you in.
First speaker is Cindy Sayeg.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hi,
Cindy.
sorry about that. On my phone, so I can't see anything. I live off of Pleasant Hill Road, and I have 2 kids at Spring Hill, and I actually spent the last 10 years living on Stanley Boulevard until moving 6 months ago, just up the road. And so I'm very familiar with Stanley and being at Accolades just all the time, running, walking, playing with kids, and my kids will be going there eventually. I just wanted to add a couple of comments that I think that as someone who lived in that neighborhood and regularly walked up and down that street, going from my home to Spring Hill and again to Accolades, the traffic there is atrocious. People speed like crazy. And I think that the speed bumps or speed humps that are recommended for the line item or AC8 are really critical. And I'm really glad to see those. And I just want to give, more support to that. I also think that anything that can be done to address that sidewalk along Spring or Stanley that runs behind or next to the Accolades track is another really good example of something could ideally be done to deal with people potentially falling into the street. Bikers always trying to avoid walkers. If you're in that area when the high school kids are coming and going, there's just not enough space, obviously, for all the kids on there. And so you're dealing with a lot of parents who unfortunately are speeding or unexperienced drivers who are all not paying attention and on their phones. And I think it's an accident really waiting to happen there. So I think that if there could be something more done there, like I know we talked about the striping, but I don't know what types of barriers are able to be put into sidewalk, like a railing or something, anything of that nature, I think would be really helpful. And then just something to deal with the speed limit sign, the speeding in general, just in that area. And I noticed something, I don't remember the line item, but regarding the flashing beacon lights, both for exiting the school and then also the approach on Pleasant Hill Road coming out of Stanley and heading north on Pleasant Hill Road during school hours. I mean, just in general, everybody's speeding around that area, and that intersection is such a dangerous place to be in, with the kids constantly walking in front of traffic without the crosswalks, going over to the gas station. I just think all of those things should really be considered. It's really not a matter of trying to inconvenience residents who live in the area, just a matter of safety for trying to keep all of our kids safe. And same thing with that Springbrook pool driveway, having a crosswalk there is critical because lots of kids and people come and go from there. So I just want to give my support for having those speed bumps and those crosswalks added. They may seem redundant, but I really think it's critical as someone who lived on that street for the last 10 years and personally experienced it. And I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Question.
Lynn, go ahead.
Yeah, I had noticed on weekends that there's a lot of running of the signals. I had noticed particularly from south to north and particularly from bicyclists. Did Cindy's happen to, over the 10 years, did she believe that that was a problem, running the stop signs, running the stop signals?
100%. People run the stoplight all the time. People coming west down Stanley. So from my old house, driving west, heading towards Pleasant Hill Road. So Accolades is on your right. That light is very specific outside of school hours and reacts to the cars. So you can see as soon as people start to approach like Happy Days area, they see whether that light is red or green or what's happening with the traffic flow and immediately accelerate in order to catch that light. And routinely, that's true. Even outside of school hours, people are trying to get through that light all the time. And when it's very crowded and there's lots of traffic, people are trying to do that even more. So you will see kids actually in the crosswalk getting ready to go or approaching the crosswalk, and cars are still cutting through because they're trying to make the lights, and inevitably it's red. And that's also true for the stop signs, even at Camino Diablo and Stanley, further back up Stanley, past the pool. People are routinely even running those stop signs. So again, as someone who lived on Stanley and further up, the stop signs are constantly run. So people just speed up and down and use Stanley as a pass through and routinely try to run those lights.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Next speaker, please.
Can we write down enforcement?
The next speaker is William Folkson.
Can we see these people? Is it possible to see them?
Only if
If-
they have their video turned on.
If they want to, they can.
Mr. Folkson, you are in the meeting.
You're on mute, please.
Can't hear him.
Yeah, hold on, Lynn.
The button?
Yes, you
Here
got
we
it.
are.
Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, commissioners and Mike and Drew and Adam. Drew and Adam, I'm going to ask you you guys need to go to the bathroom or take off your headsets. This won't involve you. And Mike, don't worry, this will be less painful than you think. And I'm going to ask you guys to all put down your presentation tables and listen to a story. You don't need to follow the presentations. I'm going to be talking about Burton Valley on the tables. It happens to be BV1, BV2, BV5, and BV6, but you don't even need to refer to them. I was born in Boston, Massachusetts, and my parents raised me. One of the first things I remember them teaching me was, don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal. And they said 2 out of 3 doesn't count. My dad in particular taught me that my word was my bond, but when I was dealing with anybody, their word, their handshake meant a lot, but get it in writing if you can. I moved here to Burton Valley in 1986. I've lived here for 36 years on Marywood Drive. In my business career of over 40 years, I was in the mergers and acquisitions business. I did over 24 deals, buying and selling various companies. During that process, I dealt with my attorneys, Wilson, Sonsini, Goodrich, and Rosati over in Palo Alto. And whenever we closed a deal, I'd sit in a room with thousands of pages of documents. On every single deal, there were thousands of pages of documents. And I remember early on saying, is this all necessary? And they said, no. On every deal you do, you sign all the documents, it's just in case, and you file them away. And if everything goes right, you never consult those documents again. And he was right. Over my 40-year career, I never, ever had to go back and look at documents until now. We received a one-page document from you, Mike, and from Mayor Geringer, articulating, based on our idea, that you should not be interfering with a pilot study in Burton Valley by adding things to it incrementally while the pilot study was ongoing. And you agreed in writing and verbally to not mess with the pilot study for 1 year. Then, approximately a week or so ago, we were notified that these items were all going to appear on the agenda at tonight's meeting. And there were 4 things here that were appearing on the agenda that were promised to us in writing not to be part of a future agenda until January of 2023. Now, you agreed to that because you said that, you're right, we should not be interfering with the pilot study. We wanted it because for the past 3 to 4 years, we're sick and tired of being attacked with pilot study upon pilot study upon pilot study. We've had a Safe Trek report. We've had a Safe Routes to School report. We've had a berm project. We had a project that discriminated against Americans with the Disabilities Act. We don't have time to organize, to be engineers, to attend these meetings all the time. We're sick of it. You're sick of us. We know that. All we were asking tonight was for you to live up to your agreement and not consider any additions, no addenda, to the pilot study for 1 year. We have it in writing.
Thank you for those comments.
I'll be glad to answer any other questions, or the
Right.
people following me will answer the questions too.
Right. So any questions for Mr. Paulson?
Lynn Hedane had it right, Mike. You have BV5. If you can do that through a work order that does not involve any other approvals, go right ahead. But all these other items have a cumulative effect on this neighborhood, and they were prohibited by that written agreement. You sent that letter to 800 residents. You did it. I've got 800 residents now who want to know, does the city's word make a difference?
Thank you. And we're going to talk about your letter also when we come back. But I appreciate your comments.
Right. You also should know I had a conversation. The mayor was kind enough to call me this afternoon, but it was an unproductive conversation.
Okay. Thank you. All right, Therese.
The next speaker is Lisa Williams.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Williams. I am a Spring Hill parent. I have 3 kids that attend Spring Hill. I have lived in Lafayette for 11 years, so I frequent Stanley quite often. I live in the Accolades Ridge neighborhood, kind of behind the church area. Do you mind if I share my screen for a minute?
Sure, you've got 2.5 minutes, so just be cognizant of that.
Okay. All right. So I frequent this area a lot, so I just wanted to share what I'm seeing on Stanley. So as you can see, this area is extremely busy. I cringe every time I drive down Stanley twice a day, in the morning and in the afternoon. I no longer allow my 3 children to ride their bikes to school because of that extremely dangerous narrow sidewalk that Cindy Saig mentioned earlier. I feel extremely uncomfortable on that sidewalk just being an adult. I no longer let my kids ride their bikes there because I'm afraid if there is a mistake, they will fall into oncoming traffic on Stanley. Mike mentioned the sidewalk on that East Bay Mud area, which I believe is on this side. A lot of kids use that East Bay Mud trail in that whole neighborhood behind there. So if there are cars parked there and they're riding a bike, there needs to be enough room for them to go along that fence line to get to the hopefully new sidewalk that will be on Camino Pablo. You can also see if we put a sidewalk there, I'm not sure where that sidewalk is going to because this side of Stanley is way too narrow. Kids just literally walk into the street on Stanley because there's not enough room. On trash day, keep in mind there's trash cans all along here and there's no room for the kids to walk, and they're going around those trash cans and into oncoming traffic. So you can see how crazy this is and frustrated people are. I mean, people are literally driving on the wrong side of the road. This is the sidewalk that I was mentioning that Cindy also mentioned. It is extremely narrow and dangerous. This is how narrow the road is. The tire is literally on the center area here. And then this is my last thing that I will say is this entire overflow parking here at the Springbrook Pool, potholes everywhere. It's in really bad shape and there's no sidewalk here and no crossing. And there's a lot going on here. People are pulling into Springbrook Pool driveway, they're pulling out, and then there's cars, and then also kids are crossing. So it's a very congested, high traffic area. And then I'm in big support of crosswalks here.
Right. And I know you're out of time, but thank you for also all of your letters.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, everyone, and for listening.
Hold on a sec. So any questions for Lisa? All right. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you so much.
Lynn?
Next,
Yeah, is it possible for us to do 4 minutes? There's no law that says we have to give 3. And this is a very serious matter for all of us.
I think let's keep going with the 3-minute rule. I mean, if there's questions, then obviously that will elicit additional time. Is there another speaker?
yes, next speaker is Christy Hedrick.
Sorry for the delay. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
This is such an important topic to me that I am currently in Monte Carlo, sitting in my robe in the lobby, and it is 4:30 a.m. here. So I appreciate so much the time that you are investing in the safety of our community. I feel that in general, because we love Lafayette being having that small town feel, which I also very much appreciate. The space is always a challenge. And so I really appreciate the effort that's being put into the safety of our children. I also live in the area that is currently behind the church. And so I use that area quite a bit, simply for myself, for running in the neighborhood, walking my children, walking my dog. I have now lived in Lafayette for about 6 to 7 years. And I used to live in the neighborhood that's a little bit higher up on the Quant Circle when I was a renter before purchasing. The whole intersection that we are talking about and that area of the road just is very dangerous. It doesn't take a professional to be able to observe that. We have high schoolers who are jaywalking constantly when school is coming in, when school is going out. We have very young drivers, which, in the rate they pay for insurance is testament to the fact that they're just inexperienced. We have people rushing and, as has mentioned before, running lights. The visibility is not good. There isn't places for people to be. It's not like, it'd be easy to blame the people driving, but there just isn't enough room. So I know I personally did not get the study in time because I'm traveling internationally right now. So I can't refer to a certain point, but I very much appreciate and support anything that can help our children be more safe. In the past, I lived at Marywood, which is where an accident did happen, where unfortunately a child did pass away. And that was a couple of years ago. But in living there, I put up these total eyesore signs in my front yard, begging people to slow down, because in casual conversation, sadly, I mentioned it's only a matter of time till someone gets hurt because it's just not safe. And I am feeling the same about the intersection we are discussing in the area of the Pleasant Hill and the Stanley area because of the high school and because of the lack of places for people and cars to be. So just thank you very much for your time invested in investing in the safety of our community. Thank you.
Thanks. Lynn, question?
Yeah. With regard to the Burton Valley fatality, are you aware that that unfortunate child hit the truck? The truck did not hit him. Are you aware of that?
Yes, I am very aware of that. There, again, I feel like we have a similar situation in that we have children who are navigating a location that things are not very clearly laid out. There is not a clear place for a child, let's say, on a bike. There is not a clear place for the cars to fit and to go. There is not a clear, and I noticed that you referred to the Korean. I'm so sorry that I don't know the report, but I did spend some time in Korea, and it is amazing the safety that they have there. I'm not saying we can get the same level of that because we may not have the space for it, but it does strike me as an ideal to strive for.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you.
I hope I answered your question.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for participating.
Thank you very much for your time spent on this. It's such an important topic.
Right. Thank you. All right. Therese?
The next speaker is Sarah. I don't have your last name, so please introduce yourself, Sarah.
Hi, are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm out and about and in the car, so I'll spare you video. But I just came on to echo everyone's sentiments, especially Lisa Williams and Cindy Sags in regards to Stanley Boulevard. And just all in all, as a community of Lafayette, child safety needs to be a priority. Our town is growing so rapidly with construction, and there's going to be more pedestrian traffic in the coming years. And I just feel like it's a critical asset to our quaint and really wonderful community that we put this as a top priority. And that's all I have to say.
Well, thank you for your comments. Any questions for Sarah? Right. Well, thank you for your comments.
The next speaker is Sanford Sherman. Sorry, I'm having difficulty promoting Sanford to a panelist.
Well, keep trying. I see a tile, but
Okay.
Sanford, can you take yourself off of mute? Okay, almost. Are you able to, Therese, are you able to take this person off?
No,
of mute?
I can ask.
Okay.
I can ask him to unmute, but I'm not sure he's getting the message.
Okay. Let's
Here, how about now?
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Sanford Sherman 3639 Baker Lane, Lafayette, which is lower off of Lower Happy Valley Road. I'm assuming that when you did the walkabouts with families, they mentioned how long it takes them to deliver their children to school. Was this a big complaint? We've spent 60 years making it easier for traffic to move through the streets of Lafayette, and now you're going to try to undo all of this in a relatively short time. I salute that you're trying to do it because it's appropriate. Anything that's good for the children is going to be good for me, and I'm 91 years old. I walk to almost all of my appointments for medical care. I do most of my own shopping. I've had plenty of run-ins. Of course, I had plenty of run-ins when I was still a driver. In June, before I gave up my driver's license, I was turning left to go home off Happy Valley Road up Baker Lane. And that's a double yellow line, in case you don't know it, double yellow line with bumpers. And somebody tried to pass me on the left. Now, this is what I refer to as suburban privilege. A lot of people who live in Lafayette think that they don't have to obey the rules. I hope that you're going to work with the schools very closely and the parent clubs to get them to understand why these new efforts are being made, and so that they can say, hey, look, Mom, at 30 miles an hour, it takes you 2 minutes to go a mile. At 25 miles an hour, it takes you 2 minutes and 24 seconds. Do you have 24 seconds to invest in my safety and my safety of that old man who lives on Baker Lane? I say that they do have that time. It's absolutely essential that you get the parent clubs and the schools heavily involved in making this safety activity prime. And I will support any city council member who supports reducing the speed limit all over Lafayette to 25 miles an hour.
You have 20 more seconds if you need it.
Oh, well, I'm through. Thank you.
Okay, then let's hold on for a second. Lynn, you have a question?
Yes, I just wanted to say Sandy Sherman has been here since the incorporation of this city.
Right.
You're talking to a historical figure and one who was formative in Lafayette's very early years.
Yeah. Thank you for your comments. I appreciate you calling in.
The next speaker is Claudia Cohen.
Hi, good evening. I hope you can hear and see me. I'm Claudia Cohen, and where to begin? I'm a resident of Burton Valley, live a few blocks from Burton Valley Elementary. I won't repeat what one of the prior speakers has said before about written promises and, you know, sort of the sadness that I feel that the very simple ask of letting the pilot study proceed without interference is not addressed. We don't want it rejected. I mean, bring up everything again. Just let the pilot study please proceed. The second thing is one of the meetings, I think it was the walk around at Burton Valley. I took to heart one of Brooke, the consultant at Tool Design, and the mayor's suggestions to educate myself on Vision Zero because, you know, it's being quoted everywhere. And because I wanted to understand what it was about. And it was the website's informative. I learned a lot about the tenets of Vision Zero. Some of the key components are data-driven, community engagement, transparency, cooperation and collaboration, action plan, and systems-based approach. And there's others. One of the other things that Vision Zero emphasizes is to focus traffic measures in high injury networks. So Burton Valley, which has not had a car-caused injury or death in over 60 years and is deemed one of the safest neighborhoods in California, why are these measures even up for discussion here? Why rush through the projects before the pilot study is even complete? I did want to say regarding growth in Lafayette, the state finance department released numbers yesterday, 25,000 residents and a flat projection for 5 years. So according to the state finance department, there's no growth. But back to Vision Zero, what I find is that the city of Lafayette isn't following the tenets of Vision Zero. It's not data driven when one of the key advocates of Vision Zero in Lafayette publicly commented that collecting data is a waste of time and money. Instead of transparency, the citizens of Lafayette are given little or no notification of traffic proposals and changes for their neighborhoods. If there is an action plan, we're unaware of it. We're unaware of a task force. And instead of community engagement, there's community enragement, as majority of residents are angry, ignored, and lied to by city officials. So it doesn't seem, if I follow the tenets of Vision Zero on their website, it doesn't seem that that's what the city is doing. So I would simply like to understand what it is you're following if it's not Vision Zero. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Thank you. We'll talk about some of your comments later.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Jamie Hession.
Hey, everybody.
Hi.
Can you all hear me?
Yes. Hi.
Hi. So I have a statement to make, and it is that we citizens of Lafayette have elected city leaders who voted to take away our right to weigh in on the safety of our children as they transition to and from our local schools. I have gathered that there was supposed to be a joint meeting between City Council and the Transit Commission before voting on Vision Zero in November to discuss the public weighing in, but that never happened, right? This Vision Zero policy has deliberately muted the public on school safety, traffic, and transportation issues citywide. This is a policy that so far denies collecting and measuring of data to back up any additions or changes that Transit Commission wants to make to our roadways. It is a policy that supports not notifying the local residents that the curb in front of their house will be turned into a multi-use pathway, and they can no longer park there 24/7, 365 days a year. Further, there are no renderings of what it will look like, just that it will happen. Mike Moran, hey. Did you ever fill your vacancy and find someone to manage the Vision Zero projects, to interact with consultants and represent the city, to develop an action team, to bring reports back to the Trans-Circ and City Council? Mike?
Keep talking. We'll discuss your questions later.
There has to be a Vision Zero task force by now that represents a cross-section of community. A local mom and Vision Zero expert has raised her hand, but has anyone else? I don't think there is any representation of households with family kids who live too far away to walk or bike or need a ride for any other reason, be it rain or smoke. I am happy to help to provide any ideas of how to calm the traffic at Stanley and Accolades. I have many years of experience with these commutes. I found an article at Safe Routes to School partner Molly Green wrote, most Safe Route schools practitioners agree that a half a mile is as far as most kindergartners will walk happily. A mile is reasonable length to older elementary schools, and that 1.5 miles is an acceptable distance for high schoolers. Assuming a Stanley household is located 2 miles away, per the SCIP of Lafayette, this is average. There are hundreds of households that are up to 3, 4, 5 miles from Stanley. I do not feel it is healthy to ask my daughter to ride to and from school 4 miles a day, 20 miles a week, and 80 miles a month with a backpack on her shoulder. May I continue?
Yeah. Please wrap it up.
I think busing would work, but does the tool group have a tool in their toolkit for buses if more added and routed down through School Street amidst the kids who have been incentivized to walk and bike? I have not seen one. I recognize carpools as a way to reduce traffic and emissions. There has been no messaging thus far from the district or Stanley regarding the changes that will take place on School Street. I hope they relay soon, because the displaced cars that are currently poised and agitated in backed up traffic, filling up the courts of Paradise and Avalon, ready to accidentally be involved in a driver-related accident with our kids and crossing guards is imminent.
Okay,
Thank
you, Jamie.
You're welcome.
Any questions for Jamie? Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I see no other hands raised.
Okay. All right, let's bring it back. We'll have a time check. Is everybody good to continue for a while?
Oh,
Anybody need a break?
correction, there is another speaker.
Oh, okay, let's call up Abby.
Very well. I'm bringing Abby Fateman into the meeting.
Good evening, commissioners and staff and consultant team. Thanks for spending the evening with the community of Lafayette. I'm a Burton Valley resident, and I just want to chime in quickly to thank the commission and staff for working on the Burton Valley Safety Pilot Project. I'm looking forward. I'm currently enjoying increased safety benefits walking around the neighborhood, so I want to thank you for that. The paint, the change in parking, the speed humps have all been a noticeable change in quality of life for the better for people who are walking, cycling, and even those driving around the community because it is safer for everyone. I did also want to say that the walkabout in Burton Valley was a bit of I don't think it went the way anybody hoped it would. There was not really an opportunity to walk around Burton Valley with the consultant team and for people to point out areas of concern. It turned more into a heated conversation would be generous, but exchange around the entire process and people upset with the process. So I would ask that people engage proactively and not obstruct this process so that we can really get information to understand how to make our community safer and be able to have that exchange of information so that when the Burton Valley Safety Project timeline ends, we have a suite of things that we can look at to continue to improve safety in our community. So I want to apologize for my neighbors who behaved so poorly at that meeting. And I want to extend my appreciation for everyone who is working on prioritizing safety in our communities. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Any questions for Abby? Okay. All right.
I see no new speakers' hands raised.
All right. So Lynn, do you have a question?
Yeah, Abby's always interesting to listen to.
Oh, she's already left.
Oh, I'm still, I can leave.
Oh, you are?
Happy to
Okay.
leave, but I'm still here.
Oh, good. Thank you.
I just turned off my camera, but I'm happy to
Abby. A question, not so much for Abby, but with regard to Abby. Is there data somewhere that we can watch with regard to this pilot project so that we can read the data as it goes along? Is there a cumulative there cumulative points or bits of information, categories that someone is keeping that we can sort of track like a barometer?
Wouldn't that be a question for Mike?
Well, no, we've got a consultant also.
Well, you're asking Abby, I thought so.
No. I said that Abby raises interesting questions.
I see. Okay. Well,
Are there,
why don't you hold that thought about data, because that's something we should discuss.
because it won't come up again.
Well, sure it will.
No, it won't. I won't ask it again, and they won't think about it, and we'll stop the meeting. Why can't we ask it now? Answer it now.
Not the process we're going to have. So the answer is I wrote it down and we'll ask about it later. So what I want to do is ask whether or not the commissioners are comfortable with continuing for a bit, or does anybody need a break at this point? Yeah. Greg?
I guess I would advocate, I like the city council's process of taking a break every couple hours. That would be my position.
Okay. Then let's do this. Let's have a break. It's 8:06. Let's come back and reassemble at 8:15. Okay, it's a little bit longer, but I give people a chance to snack if they need blood sugar. Okay, so let's take a break and we'll reassemble at 8:15. All right, I'm assuming Drew's there. Yep, he is there. Okay. Let's see. Okay. It's 8:16 p.m. Let's reconvene and let's talk a little bit about some of the comments we heard. And I wasn't really aware of the situation that Mr. Foxen about until I saw Mr. Foxen's letters, and some were passed on to me. And I have some questions about the Burton Valley area items, and then I also want to I have kind of sort of technical questions about it, and then I want to talk to the commissioners and see whether we should address the Burton Valley items separately from the rest of the schools. So and so this is not well scripted out, so let's just see how it goes, and we'll talk amongst ourselves and see if we can come to some agreement. For these 4 items that are in Burton Valley, 2 of the items I know were mentioned in the Safe Trek reports from many years ago. I'm talking about BV1 and BV5. And I might have missed the others, but I wondered if these 2 items were like kind of overlooked during were they overlooked, or are they too far away from school to have been considered as part of the pilot project originally? I guess that's the first kind of question I have. I don't know if Mike, and that's a two-part question. That's one part I was curious about. And the second part is, do any of these items interfere with the pilot program as it's currently being executed? So Those are two questions I had. I don't know if you care to address those, Mike.
So on the first question regarding the pilot study, the focus of the pilot study was to calm traffic and try and provide a dedicated space for pedestrians and bicyclists. So it didn't look at some of these other ancillary things. The Safe Track report was already out, but it wasn't the scope. The scope of this type of thing came out with the safety improvements near schools push that the city council pushed for. So Burton Valley was just one of 7 schools, as you know, that was included in this. It just also happened to be a school that we just did a lot of work at to calm traffic and try and come up with some better alternatives for bicyclists and pedestrians and anybody on a scooter or a roller of some sort. So that's the first question. So we didn't not look at it, and we didn't look at it because it wasn't the focus of that pilot study. Regarding the second question, I personally don't feel that these would drastically impact, and I read the letter that I wrote to the public. I know what it says. However, there's disagreement, obviously, based on public comment tonight. Others in the community believe that some of these or any of these would, one way or another, impact the pilot study. You're talking about moving a sign in the bike barricade that I would have done just with a work order, which would have had nothing to do with anything, because it would have been the right thing to do. And you're emphasizing a stop that's already there. The only thing I would say that might impact it is any additional centerline striping or amplified striping that we might do. That would be what I could see impacting it. Having said that, other than the bicycle one, you could wait on all of it or you could do all of it. And I personally don't believe it's going to have a negative impact on the data that you're getting, which is primarily numbers and speeds. And tool is we are initiating another round of data collection, Lynn, to answer that question. And so there's my comments.
Could I hear, what did you say about the data?
That we're collecting traffic counts and speed data. We had some from before the pilot study, and we'll have it from at least a couple of times during the pilot study and at the end of the pilot study, so that we'll have something to look at. That is part of Tool's contract with the city. And we are recently, we're discussing collecting another round of that data.
So let me recap what I heard. The scope of these items is really kind of different from the scope of the pilot program, is what you're, if I heard that correctly. There's overlap, I guess, right? Do these items, and I have a question about one of them, but do these items, if they were not executed until next year, would they, two ways to look at it. If we did them right away, would they help increase safety? Is the first question. And if we didn't do them until January, would that be a risk, a big risk that we should consider? I don't know if there's any way to answer that. Anyway, those were some of the things I've been thinking about, since I saw the letter this afternoon. And I'd like to open this up to the other commissioners, because traditionally there'd be two ways to approach it. One way is to say, we're going to only talk about what is really good for the citizens in terms of safety. And those are the recommendations of the Transportation and Circulation Commission. And basically punt the political questions up to the city council level and let them deal with whether or not they want to actually have this stuff enacted and funded. So, I mean, the other possibility is that we as a group just say, let's defer this whole items or some of these items until after the pilot program's done. So what I'd like to do is get the different commissioners' viewpoints on, are these items, in your opinions, are these items worth pursuing because they would provide additional safety, separate from the whole political issue? Are these things that are worth doing right now, or are these things that we might want to wait on? Okay, let's have a discussion. Greg, you had your hand up first.
Yeah, thanks, Carl. Yeah, I too was, unaware of the communications back and forth. I'm reasonable minds can differ as to whether these are significant changes or not. My personal impression is that these are relatively minor changes, again, and moving an existing stop sign, a couple of small median signs that say yield to pedestrians. I personally kind of feel that's separate and apart from what the pilot was. That said, I understand that the community has a position and may not, want changes at this point. I guess my thinking is that I would like to see some work done on that trail. And if that is something, that's in my mind clearly outside the pilot, something that the city could do anyhow, I would prioritize, at least within the BBE projects, moving forward with that. And, we could pause or hold, I guess, on the others while the pilot goes to completion.
Art, you had your hand up.
Yeah. I've read the letter, the February 11th letter, and listened to Mike's, the comments that he just made. I think, to me, it's pretty clear. I think that what we need to do is, create the conditions where we can engage and develop consensus with the neighborhood, the neighbors, the neighborhood in Burton Valley. So looking at the three projects, I don't see a significant danger in delaying those until after the pilot study is completed and we've had a chance to look at a survey that may follow or whatever data is collected. I think that's what the neighbors want, and I think that's what would serve us best going forward and continue to make improvements in the Burton Valley area. So that's where I am right now.
Lynn?
Yeah, I do. I agree with Greg and Bart. And I don't, let me set something else. I don't understand why we have on the staff report one set of items and on the full attachment 2, we have another set. We have 1, 2, 3, and 4, table 1 and table 2, but on the staff report, we have 5 and 6. Why aren't they all together? That I don't know. And I don't understand it because it's very confusing not to have them all together. Secondly,
okay, hold on a second. So Lynn, are you talking about what's in table 2 for Burton Valley? There's items 1, 2, 5, and 6. Is that
1, 2, 3, and 4 on table 1 and 2 in the pamphlet labeled attachment 2 for Burton Valley, and then on the staff report it says here table that's one page 3 of the staff report, and that says table 2, and they've got 1, 2, 5, and 6, and then mayor is underneath, and then comes I don't understand why they're not all together, because on neither page are they all together. That's one thing.
Okay, so let's wait. Let's have Mike and or Drew address that. But my reaction was this report, and what we're doing tonight is targeting quick build items that we can execute soon. So the tables that are in the actual tool report have a different table numbers because they were split up in different ways. What we've done is basically taken the short-term items that we want to execute soonest. And it's too bad that, yes, in the staff report, it's unfortunate that Burton Valley wasn't labeled table B. Okay, maybe that would have been a little different, but does that answer the question, Lynn, or should we have Mike or Mike chime in on that?
Well, you've got these two papers.
Yeah.
The
So
public, including me, is
Right.
reading these two papers with two sets of recommendations. I don't know whether this is going to go, these two are going to go to the city council later and the city council is going to vote on all of it.
Yeah, so it's
very confusing.
okay. So in the staff report, this is on the second page, I believe. There's a section that says recommendations, and what the goal is we were taking, staff had gone through with the assistance of the consultants and some of the transfer commissioners to identify and discuss what are the most important short-term things to be addressed. Those items are what's in the staff report. That's what we're going to be deciding and sending to the city council. The items that aren't on the staff report are items that will be either addressed in the future or they might be superseded. So I understand what you're saying, that we could have labeled everything and put something down as not for, deferred for later or something, but that's not the way they built it. They built it by just putting in things that we're going to talk about and act on.
But let me say that there are a lot of good recommendations in the pool report.
Yes.
And a lot of those are not in the staff report.
Well, most of those are labeled as implementation timeline midterm and priority medium.
Well, I saw how they were labeled, but how is anyone to know what we're going to vote on and what's going to the city council? Only the things that are in Mike's staff report, not the ones in the pool report.
All the things in the staff report are short-term, high priority items that staff and consultants think can be implemented rather quickly. And so it's not, so the things that are not in the report are not going to, it's not that they're going to be forgotten. It's just that there's a different time frame for them.
So when are these coming up, the rest that aren't in Mike's report? When did these others?
Mike, would you care to talk about that?
Yeah, so Lynn, so any one of them could come up tonight. And as you'll recall, that's exactly what happened the last time we went through the first three schools.
Yes.
What I listed in tables 1 through 4 in my staff report are the ones that I believe we should implement based on their cost, how much safety they'll provide, how quickly we can install them. I meant that to help the commission reduce down their discussion. You may agree with most of those, and then that would be a done deal that you would vote on and affirm and pass up to the city council.
And then we
in addition to that,
from the report.
In addition to that, anything else in the tool report is certainly fair game to discuss and include. And if you'll recall, you did in fact add some things from the tool report that weren't in these recommended tables in the staff report last time. An example of that was SL9, where we removed parking from First Street to Paradise Court on School Street. Okay, so you have a lot of sets of information here. I tried to cull through them with staff's recommendation of what to implement and what to put to the council, given the cost, given, I believe, their safety effectiveness, and of course in consultation with Tool. And then some of the medium term and long term would have to be funded, would have to come back later. Some of these are temporary paint and stick types of things that we learned about earlier that could be done permanently as a path or a concrete curb, but that would have to be done in conjunction with a more expensive, longer term project.
Yeah. And just to
It's
follow
as simple as that. It's not to confuse you. It actually was intended to help you. And then if you look at the staff report and you agree or don't agree, any of these could be removed based on your discussions now. And anything else in the tool report could be brought up and said, you know what, you didn't include this. And I also think this is very important. Please consider this, you know, when you take this to the city council as well.
But it's very
That's
hard.
your discussion now.
Yeah, it's very hard for the public also. When I left the last commission meeting at I think it was around 11, the removal of parking on School Street was sort of up in the air, and it was the commission was discussing doing this in chunks, and that's what Drew had recommended, doing a little bit and then a little bit more. So I do like the idea of doing everything at once, but I don't like the idea of removing parking. I had thought, because there have been other designs, that we could take other space and still save the parking and still get the pathway. You say there isn't space. James Hincap thought there was space. Chuck thought there was. Whether there is or isn't, I don't know. But so right now we're working only with the staff report.
No, so let me
Add from the combination.
Yeah, please let me interrupt. So at the beginning, maybe I wasn't clear enough. At the beginning of the meeting, I talked about the process of going through and ask technical questions. Then we would get public comments. Then we'd come back and we would have another opportunity to talk about the individual items, and at which time we could add or delete items if we felt that something should be added or something should be taken away. So that process is what we're going to do right now. But because of the nature of the controversy around Burton Valley, I wanted to split off Burton Valley first so that we could really decide as a commission whether or not we should endorse these recommendations, all of them, part of them, or none of them. Okay, so.
And I would like to comment on that.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so the neighbor, it may not matter to us particularly, but it matters a lot to the neighborhood. And to my mind, that is extremely important. The Traffic Commission, ever since its beginning, its whole life has been its relationship with the neighborhoods. It's always been that way. And I sort of want to keep that. The commission is known for hearing out the neighborhood and paying attention to it. And if they're I think it was Bill who said that they would be able to manage, they thought, perhaps number 5. And what was it? Leaving on. I personally feel very strongly that we need to look at the spacing about putting any signs on Aurora Drive, because those lanes have been, I think they're 9-foot lanes myself, but it's been a long time since I've worked with 9-foot lanes, so I can't remember anymore without measuring. SIA did odd things and it's working beautifully, but I don't think there is room for a sign. You see cars parked along the way on Aurora Drive by the entry to the school, and you see tire wheels over in the travel lane because there isn't room for the parking. So I would not support any center signs anywhere until it's been looked at more carefully. So I sort of tend to feel that I support that neighborhood.
Okay. So let's ask a question that I had earlier, and so did others.
Well, that was my answer to your question.
Well, here's the follow-up question. What are your thoughts regarding the bollards on the trail? The comment in the Safe Track report is the last thing you want is kids to crash and impale themselves on bollards at the end of a trail. So
say that again louder.
If you recall from the staff report and from pictures in the Safe Track report, you may not remember this, but there are stakes, there's bollards, there's like a there's a barrier to prevent, basically to separate the end of the trail. And the Safe Trek report specifically called out the danger of that type of construction. Okay. So I wondered if you had thoughts on the trail, the way that the BV5, whether that is worth considering without community, going through a community process.
That the neighborhood was all right with that, according to Bill. I think he said. That was my understanding of what he said. And if the
Okay.
neighborhood finds that acceptable, then it's acceptable with me too.
Okay.
And it does appear, I don't understand, I haven't seen the boards.
Okay.
So I'm not sure what you're talking about because I haven't walked up there.
Yeah, I took, it's on both on, doesn't matter, but it's on Google Pictures and also it's in the Safe Trek
Yeah, I
report.
mean,
And
I
I
trust
also
the
went out
judge.
and looked at it also.
Yeah, I
Okay.
trust Mike's judgment and I trust Tool if they've seen it and so on and so on. The Lafayette Moraga Trail was my project back in 1972. I care a lot about trails and I care a lot about.
And this is a pathway, just really clear. It's it's a
yes,
narrow pathway.
I have no problem with that whatsoever, but I would like the
I got you. I got you.
community to be in line with it. And
I
I
understand.
don't have a problem with that.
Okay. Stella, do
I do have a problem with Roar Drive.
Okay, Stella, do you want to weigh in on Burton Valley as you know, these items, or just Burton Valley in general?
Yeah, thank you, Carl. I definitely support at BV5 for the safety improvement that it would bring, and that knowing that the neighborhood, that we've heard speakers from the neighborhoods express support for that. I guess I have a question about sort of what is the mandate from council to us. I mean, I think what my sense is asked us to give some feed to them about these projects, not just when they should be implemented or which ones, but sorry, my cat. Sorry.
That's okay.
Getting distracted. So let me try to regroup here. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is, it's council want us to just give feedback about these projects and what we view them in terms of just their safety and efficacy, because we have Tool here, we have the ability to ask them questions to understand these, and just leave it at that, which is basically let council know, yes, we think what Tool has told us about the safety effects of these means that they are good projects, and let the council determine when they actually want to, and if they want to fund them, and then if they do them, when they want to implement them.
Okay. All right. So then there's a couple of ways we can go. Whoops. A couple of ways we can go. And to your point, Stella, that was one of the things I had thought about also. One potential way to do this is to say that we approve of all of these particular items, but we recommend that, you know, that only one of these be implemented until after, you know, after the pilot program's over. Another way to do it is we could say, we recommend one item and all the other items we want to have brought back to us after the pilot program.
But we may not approve of Royer. And Tool isn't so sure they know about Royer either.
I'm talking about which direction do we take? Because
we can't support Royer Drive to the city council, is what I'm saying.
Well, you can't, but it was in the Safe Trek report, and well detailed in the Safe Trek report. If you talk about BV1, I think there's a history there. And in many items that we talk about, we basically say, this is the direction we want to go on this item. And then the city staff have to go back and look at the engineering on it and so forth. So it is possible we could recommend it. The question is, should we? Stella?
Well, I think for BV1 and 2, these are some pretty basic and I would say fundamental signage, safety signage items that it just seems like we don't. Sorry, I'm having a hard time with my cat here. Trying to concentrate. It just doesn't seem like there's a whole lot to discuss about this. We have examples of these yield to pedestrian center line signs in many places in the city. Spring Hill Road has one. Spring Hill Road is very narrow, and I think Mike probably will be able to give us that measurement if we need it. But regardless, this is a recommendation from not just one consultancy, but two that are experts in traffic safety. And it seems like a very simple implementation that would potentially yield improved safety for children. So that's just moving the stop ahead sign a little bit to the east, or rather to the west, and then that center yield to the stream sign. So, I mean, it seems to me like they're fairly low-hanging fruit. That's the kind of thing that council was looking for us to evaluate. But again, I don't really. That's all about all that I think I would tell council about it, and they could take it as they wish. I do think the other BV5, I think again that one sounds like it's very much needed and would be very, very helpful.
Okay, Greg, you had your hand up.
Sure. Yeah, and still I fully agree. I mean, again, I think they're low-hanging fruit. I think they're pretty easy. I would say that, with this whole package with all 7 schools, the city's going to have its hands full with whatever's approved. So even if these were pushed back a little bit, I mean, I certainly think we would endorse them, but I don't know if now's the time. Again, I do feel strongly that BV5 should move forward at this point. And Carl, one way to approach this would be to say that, if the commission feels this way, that we endorse, 1, 5, and 6, but, we're not recommending them at this time after, hearing from the community and letting the current pilot play out.
Okay. Yep. Bart?
I agree with everything that Greg said, and I'm not in favor of sort of passing the buck to the city council to make a decision on this. I think that we ought to take a position on it, and I think that at least the way that I feel, I think most everyone is okay with BV5, but the other 3, I think that we ought to not recommend to the city council at this time, and wait for the completion of the pilot study, and again, work on creating better conditions for us to work with the community, with the neighborhoods out there to improve safety long term.
Lynn?
Yeah, would you repeat again what we would leave in and what we would not? Because I want to point out that there's a big difference between putting a fence down the middle of Spring Hill and putting a sign in the middle of the street on Roar Drive. Cars can hit those, and that gets very.
Lynn, it's the same sign that's up in Spring Hill. It's a foot or less wide. It's in many locations in the city. It's not even as big as probably the double yellow line. So it wouldn't be any different than anywhere else in the city.
You don't have.
Lynn, it's at San Relise Court.
What?
The sign has existed for many, many years at San Relise Court. It has nothing to do with the candlestick delineators that went in November. There's also one, I believe, in Burton Valley on Silverado, I believe.
It's a wide street. Roar is not.
Okay.
Spring Hill is not a wide street, but in any event.
But it's wider than Roar.
All right, so I think we're losing progress here a little bit. So.
But anyway, tell me what you would be leaving, what you would be taking out.
Well, from what I hear, let's just go through this way. Do all commissioners be okay with accepting BV5 That's the, you know, the trail modifications. Is there someone that would not want that? Okay, so BV5 I have as something that we should acknowledge as
Out.
project that should be done.
I thought this, 5 is, okay.
Number 5.
Okay.
Stella and myself, and I don't know who else, I tend to think that BV2 is a really great safety implementation that I don't know that would interfere with anything else being done with in terms of traffic counts and so forth. But I've seen it in several places in the city. So I could live with it, but I can also be okay with it not happening, because I'm very sensitive to what Bart has said, and also you, Lynn. The need for consensus is and discussion with the members of the city, I think, is very important. So the question I have is, do the commissioners feel that is something that's worth doing? Because that having signs right in front of crosswalks is another way to draw attention to kids crossing in the streets. So Lynn, could you live with BV2, or do you think that should be deferred?
Which one did Bill mention that he would be happy with? I think that's important too. He mentioned he thought the neighborhood would be happy enough accepting 5, and was it B1 or was it B2?
You know what, I didn't catch that. So
just a minute, let me see.
But let's go back to the other commissioners. Bart, you're saying you prefer to do just BV5, right?
Yes, that's where I am. Yes.
Greg, can you live with just BV5?
I can. I mean, again, I would be willing to say to the city that, you know, we would otherwise approve the others, but, you know, based on conversations with the community, we're holding for now. But yeah, I'd be willing to hold on the other 1, 2, and 6.
Okay.
Hold on, should 6.
Yeah. So basically, Lynn, I guess the question is, should we just do just BV5? And Stella, I know you had mentioned BV2 earlier as being an easy win. I would say almost that I'm on the fence on that one. You wanna be proponent of BV2?
Well, I mean, I was just saying, I think that BV1 and 2 are not tremendous changes to the roadway. There's signage, basically. But you know, I mean, I think what Greg mentioned makes sense, that we can I want to put words in his mouth, but what he said, that we endorse safety measures, and that we recommend to council that they work with the neighborhood groups some more, and bring it back to us if they so desire, or take action on their own at some later date, however they wish. So yeah, I think I could go with just BV5.
Okay, so let's do this.
1, 2, and 6.
Yeah, so I support, but I just want to say I support all of the recommendations, except that it needs a little more a little bit more interaction on those 1, 2, and 6. I think we should just defer on those. And so if everybody's thumbs up, the recommendation would be just BV5. But Bart, how did you want to handle it?
I just want to go on record and say that you know, I see all of these projects as being, you know, good, safe projects to you know, to implement at some point of time in the future. You know, and I see them as being relatively benign now, but for whatever reason, 1, 2, and 6, the neighborhood isn't happy with. And I think that we need to take steps right now in order to improve our relationship and our ability to work with neighbors in Burton Valley in order to improve safety in the future. So I think that with that in mind, I'm willing to not support BV 1, 2, and 6. BV 5 is okay because everybody appears to agree with that. And at some point of time, after the pilot study is over and we have the results of that, we can revisit this and other projects too. But that's where I am right now, and I want to make sure that everybody was clear on that. So thank you.
I think that sounds good to me. I think, so are we able to move on then? We're going to come back. So how?
Carl, are we going to make individial motions on each table? Or
I thought that we would talk about all the things we wanted to add and delete and then vote just at one time. But would the commissioners be prefer to do them one table at a time?
Yes.
Okay, then let's do this. Someone make a recommendation then that for table 2, we only support BV5 at this time and ask for the other items to be deferred until after the pilot project.
I move that we hold on 1, 2, and 6.
Okay, someone second it?
Second.
Okay.
And move forward on 5.
Okay, yes.
And that's the one with the boards, right?
Yes.
5.
Right.
So, okay, so there's a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion on this item? So for table 2, Lynn?
I just want to say that on behalf of the commission that we apologize to the neighborhood for all the confusion and what seems perhaps as though there's a difficulty in determining what was said before and what isn't and what wasn't. And it really upset that neighborhood. And I think we owe them apology. So if nobody else is going to apologize, I'd like to do that for us.
Right.
I don't think that's a commission action or recommendation at this point, though.
So we have a motion and a second.
That was a comment.
Sorry, Lynn. We have a motion and a second. And if everybody I think everybody understands it, we're going to go forward with BV5. I want to call a vote. Greg?
Aye.
Stella?
Aye.
Bart?
Aye.
And Lynn?
Aye.
And I'm also an aye. And so also I want to say, I really appreciate Bart and everybody's input on this item because we really do want to have a consensus-driven thing. And later on, after these items, I do want to address some of the comments that were mentioned about Vision Zero, but not right now. Okay, let's go to table 1. Let's try and knock out Happy Valley. I thought that I don't have any changes, any deletions or additions from my study. I'd like to know if the commissioners, other commissioners, have anything that they would like to see removed or added.
I thought it looked good. I had a question about 1, but that was answered because it's now 6. And so I'm in favor of proceeding with the table.
Okay, Bart, you had a question or
I
comment?
just have a quick comment. I was, Mr. Sanford Sherman's comments really resonated with me, and to the point that I think that better enforcement, along Happy Valley, as well as other parts of the city adjacent of Lafayette adjacent to schools, I think is really important. But I just wanted to comment that his comments made a lot of sense to me. Thank you.
Yeah. And I agree. And I think that's one of the things that we've talked about separately and not as a commission, that the need to involve parent clubs and use them as a mechanism for both education and action is going to be very important going forward. So, all right. So other changes to table 1 or any changes to table 1? Okay. Then would somebody make a motion, please, about table 1?
I'd make a motion that the commission recommends table 1 as written.
Somebody second it?
Second.
Okay. Then I'll call the vote. Stella?
Aye.
Bart?
Aye.
Lynn?
Yep.
And I'm an aye. So Lynn, did you say no?
No, I said aye.
Okay, so then it is unanimous. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, we've got through table 1, table 2. Table 3 is the mayor's schools. Is there any additions or changes to the table that's in the staff report? I don't see any hands raised. If not, then a motion. But Lynn, you have a question, comment?
Yeah, let's look that over again. Wait a minute. Where's that staff report? There needs to be something for the kids, even if it's mandatory enforcement regularly at the intersection of Condit and Pleasant Hill Road. That is a nightmare. You should look at that. Even looking at the pictures gives you chills. And then there's with regard to, what did I say? You wrote it down. The area where there was the two, it wasn't Leland and Leland. You said you would write it and you wouldn't forget it. The area that needs the 4-way stop, and I don't think that was on.
So ME2, item ME2 is a study to evaluate adding a four-way stop at that location. So what you'd be voting on tonight would be ME2 would be asking for a study of installing a stop sign at that location.
It's a 4-way. It's all of the intersections over there.
So I actually think Commissioner Hedane is referring to page 16 of the mayor school report, which I believe was public comment about the 4-way at Sunset Loop and Sunset Loop. But I don't believe that was agendized or recommended at this point.
It was in the pool report.
I believe that was public comment.
No, it was on the list in the pool report itself, on the mayor study. Do you want me to locate the page for you?
That would be helpful.
Could we ask Tool to weigh in on that? Because I believe there's those photos from the last 8 or 10 pages of the mayor school report.
Well, to Greg's point, from slide 11 forward, it's Appendix A, which included comments, observations, and public input. So if you, I don't know that there's, Lynn, if you don't have from the report a page number and a table number, an item number we can talk about, then my suggestion is that we approve table 3 as written and then bring up additional items, on a follow-up. Oh, Mike, I'm sorry, I missed your hand.
Yeah, I still believe that ME2 is what we're talking about. It was the public comment. That is Sunset Loop at Sunset Loop, and it tees with Meek Place.
Yeah, who said that, Mike?
Yes.
I did.
Yes.
I've looked at this.
Correct.
Okay. So it would be to do a feasibility study and look at the warrants of a 4-way stop at that location. I do believe we're covering it. I can look at that public comment to make sure it's not, another nearby intersection. But I think it's added already.
Yeah. Bart.
I don't see it on there, is it?
I want to make a motion.
Yes.
That we adopt table 3 as currently established in the staff report.
Okay.
Second.
Right, that's a second. Second. I think it's the right thing to do, Lynn, and so if there's an issue later, then we'll bring it up. And staff will have a chance to bring that back to us.
I would like to know what we can do to improve the situation with the cyclists at Condit and Pleasant Hill.
For our task tonight, it's refreshing the lanes, and the striping is kind of what we're being told is.
But I don't, is there a way of doing striping there at the intersection?
that
They're
didn't,
going to come up on the what, the push button is, what did you say, on the south side, as I recall, right? Or is it on the north, Mike? For the signal.
It's on the south.
That's what I thought. Okay. So they're going to come up, even with cars rounding the corner, the kids are going to come up on the right side of the street to push on the south side and to push the button, right?
so
The ones heading for Stanley, they'll be coming
If
up
they're
on the
if
south
they are
side of
crossing,
the street, even though it's the wrong side of the street. That's why we need the button on the north side of the street, so they can stay on the correct side.
there's a, Lynn, there is a button on there. The way that
It's on the south side, Carl.
the way
That means the kids have to ride on the wrong side of the street to push it.
No. Anyway.
Yes.
My understanding is they can ride on the right-hand side of the street to Pleasant Hill Road, cross at the crosswalk there to the south side, and press the button there.
Yeah.
And stay. And then they're grouped, just sitting ducks for a blind corner that are going to right turn onto Condit off of Pleasant Hill Road. That's the wrong place for them to be.
So that isn't true, Lynn, because there is a 10-foot wide walkway and a large landing and a large ramp at that corner, the southeast corner of Condit at Pleasant Hill Road. That's where the bicycles can stage. And there's a multi-purpose pathway on that east side of the road. They could even ride all the way up towards Olympic and cross there, or they could cross Pleasant Hill Road on that south side there.
I don't remember
as far as
pathway though.
As far as bike trails go, our Pleasant Hill Road is a stellar example of what you want to do. We have full bike lanes for more advanced riders if they want to be beside the traffic in the street, and we have 10-foot wide multi-purpose pathways on Pleasant Hill Road on both sides of the street. Your comment that the access to it on Condit is not how we would like it, everybody agrees with. I just don't have the road width to do much.
Can we put out
recommendation in the report? The recommendation in the report is to, at the very least, refresh striping, maybe add some delineators, and see if we can provide any more of a buffer along the shoulder of the road. So that's what I would try and do if you push this forward to the city council for funding. And that's pretty much all we can do with the scope that we're looking at this time.
Can the city put out a card or one sheet of paper to the parents to be distributed to the families at that school as to how they should be using that, what would you call it? The system, the approach, the apparatus.
So, okay, I want to cut off this discussion, but to your point, Lynn, yes, the education component is something we should do. The education component is not part of this proposal in the staff reports. And so I don't know that we need to add it to this. We've had a motion and a second on this on table 3. And so I'm going to call the vote on whether or not to accept table 3. Greg?
Aye.
Stella?
Aye.
Bart?
Aye.
Lynn?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. So I appreciate your concerns, Lynn, and that's going to be part of getting, working with the parents in school.
Who's going to do that, I wonder?
Let's bring it up at the next, let's agendize that, Mike, on a future meeting, okay?
We'll send Mike over.
All right. Okay, let's move on to table 4, Accolades High School. There's a lot of items on here. I want to make sure that everybody's comfortable with these items that are in the staff report. During the discussions, I hadn't learned of anything that made me think that we should remove or add items, but I'd like to hear everybody's opinion. Is there anybody that wants to change the table 4 as it's in the staff report? Okay, I don't see anybody. Stella, yes.
Sorry. Yeah, there are a couple things that I wanted
Okay.
to raise.
Yes.
Just to be clear, AC 15 is add flashing beacons on Pleasant Hill Road. And so I know it says beacons, but we're talking about at least 2, right? Or 2? Okay,
That covers 2, yes.
perfect. Okay. We discussed AC 17 a little bit, and I think what I recall is we need to tell you whether the commission would like it to be in the list and then considered to be bundled into restriping. That would be happening on Stanley and or Pleasant Hill Road.
I'm sorry.
This is the Pleasant Hill Road intersection at Deer Hill Stanley yellow ladder crosswalk. And now it's just the 2 parallel yellow lines, and they're kind of faded.
So are you asking to have the ladder sidewalk added to a particular item?
I guess that's what I am asking. Yeah.
So what item should we add that to, or should we create a new one?
It's AC 17.
Okay. Is there Mike or Drew? Is there a restriping item on the staff report where we could just add this ladder crosswalk?
So let me just say there's plenty of striping that we're going to be doing citywide as part of the safety improvements near schools. I would actually ask maybe Adam the question, is it appropriate to add ladder crossings at a signalized intersection? I'm just asking for a standard. I don't know. I'd have to look at MUTCD, and I'm guessing that is maybe why it wasn't a ladder in the past. But would it be okay to add it at a signalized intersection for the future?
We generally recommend them at all locations, and the reason you don't see them as much is generally because of maintenance. More expensive, more of it's driven over, they don't last as long. So there's a few reasons that people don't like to do them. It's generally a cost item, but we generally try to recommend them at all locations.
Okay, so given that comment, I mean, staff would be okay, considering that with the rest of this table and implement it with some of the other striping changes we would be doing anyway.
Okay. Lynn, your question, comment?
I was just wondering if there is a way of ensuring, I should have looked for all of these and I didn't. Is there a way of ensuring that everywhere we put a crosswalk, we clip back the greenery on the side of the roads? I almost killed a child over on El Nido because the greenery was very high and grown right up to the street. And a kid shot out of there on a skateboard. Fortunately, I was going 2 miles an hour and I slammed on the brake.
So Lynn, okay, so the question
is there a way of being sure that these are all going to be cut back and keeping them that way? The greenery on each side of the cross.
We got that. So the question is, isn't that standard procedure, Mike, when you're maintaining or building a crosswalk to make sure there's enough visibility?
So it is. Now it's a hard task to keep up because almost all of the greenery in Lafayette is private property and maintained by private property owners. So we tend to have some common noticing locations, if you will, where we notice that it's overgrown and it's difficult to see line of sight. We also have a standard at corners to have 25 feet back in both directions, no higher than 3 feet, so that you'd be able to see up and over if there were a pedestrian, even a smaller pedestrian standing there. There are very specific items on these tables that address exactly that: the pruning at Happy Valley Road, the fence and the vegetation at the location for the mid-block crossing here on Stanley Boulevard. So in general, it's covered. It's a general comment. If you see specific locations, and honestly, we did it as part of the Burton Valley pilot study as well. A perfect example is Roar at Silverado, We had some extensive pruning done by the neighbors at that location because it was brought up that this is a difficult place to see anybody around the corner. So I think we're covering it. We're not 100% successful, and we need resident help to keep it as clear and as safe as it can be.
So I don't see how we would add anything to any of these particular items to cover that, Lynn, but I think it's a valid concern, is the line of sight. Okay. What other, Stella?
Ask a question, or do you want to settle this one part?
Well, okay, Lynn.
Well,
sorry, Stella. Lynn, is this a follow-up to this site, the crosswalk question you had?
Well, I'm wondering where is there a rule of some sort where we can use teeth before a crossing or a crosswalk so that the cars will stop back instead of close up? Can we use teeth whenever we feel like it? Whenever we want to make cars stop back a few feet?
I think so, Lynn, there's a couple of different things I think you're talking about. There's two things, which is advanced stop bars or advanced limit lines. And then what you're talking about is yield teeth, or sometimes they're called shark's teeth. So those can only be used when it's a yield condition. But there are recommendations throughout all these plans to add advanced limit lines, 4 feet or more in advance of either a stop controlled crosswalk or add yield teeth where it's a yield controlled crosswalk.
But it always has to be a controlled crosswalk. There has to be signalization.
No, there does not have to be a signalization.
Actually, you would not use the shark's teeth for signalization because that's stop controlled or signal controlled. So you'd only use them at crosswalks where there's not a signal, for example, or not a stop sign.
Notice it. Okay.
So just to reframe your question, Lynn, or for Mike and for others, if you're creating crosswalks, will you be including stop bars or indications associated with those crosswalks? Mike?
At several locations, we would be. If it's a mid-block crossing, for example, that's an appropriate use of what we in Lafayette have been calling shark's teeth, the yields.
Yeah.
But if there's a stop sign there, it would be an advanced limit line, if you will.
So Lynn, this falls under the category of, I think that engineering staff will work it to the best, the best practices. And I think that your comment about wanting people to stop farther away from the crosswalk is well taken. And so, but I don't think we need to add anything here.
Could I just add something to our knowledge? The chart about the deaths that we've had, the grandma that was killed over on El Nido, she was not killed in a crosswalk. And if we'd had shark's teeth before the one line that she was walking on, that the truck also pulled up to and then crushed her. If we'd had those, she would still be alive.
So I think what Mike has just said is that we're going to try and follow best practices in terms of when we add crosswalks. And so I think we should just, I get your point. I think we should move on. Stella.
Yeah, thank you. I just had a couple of other things to suggest to add. For AC 25, that one is kind of generic, just at some point with CCTA having moved forward with their Vision Zero and pedestrian priority street designations to work with them to try to improve the conditions on Pleasant Hill Road. But there's one specific crossing that I would really like to put forward to council to consider an improvement at, and that's the northbound Pleasant Hill Road exit off ramp from westbound 24. So if you're coming westbound on 24 and you want to get off at Pleasant Hill Road to go north, you take that very long dog leg. It's not a full loop. And it's fairly blind for pedestrians and bicyclists that are using the sidewalk on the east side of Pleasant Hill Road. There are 4 crossings that are, if you're planning to go from Stanley down to Mount Diablo Boulevard, you have 4 on-off ramps, but that one is really, I think, the worst because of just the sight lines. And there's really, I mean, there's signage, there's striping, but I would love it if council would consider either as a city putting a rapid rectangular flashing beacon or working with the county and with Caltrans on a way to enhance the pedestrian bicycle safety at that location. There's a number of Kalani students that walk and bike. I've seen them also on some of the battery powered scooters now down that sidewalk.
We have had
And
fatalities there.
I was not aware of that. I was aware of one on Stanley Boulevard outside of the high school about a decade or more ago, but it's a very difficult off ramp. It's very long, fast, and cars that come off of it really have no sense of anything other than that they're I think in their minds entering another freeway. Basically, that's an interchange to a freeway, which is Pleasant Hill Road. And so just the fact that it's very close to the high school, that it is used by students to transit to and from, I think it's an important crossing to address. And I think that we certainly would hope that the Safe Routes to Accolades project, when it's funded and constructed and implemented, would provide that safe crossing, but we don't have it right now. And I think we need something.
So if I can recap, okay, actually go ahead, Mike, first. Oh, Mike, mute. Mike? Mike,
You're on mute,
muted.
Mike. You're on mute.
I would like to share my screen to see if I'm talking about the location that you are
That'd be great.
considering here, Stella. Is this the location you're talking about?
It is.
Okay.
It is, exactly. And so you can see how
So this
there's
is, yeah,
signage
this is
that blocks the
completely
visibility of the
Caltrans
person.
controlled. It has a yield here. It has the shark's teeth. It has the crosswalk. It has the merge. It has the pedestrian. I don't know what else we can convince Caltrans to do. And it has good line of sight until you get around the corner. You can't see anybody up here. But if you're in the crosswalk, it has decent line of sight. I don't know what specific we could recommend to Caltrans to incorporate.
Well,
so
an
I'm just-
RRSB, perhaps. I mean, I'd love it if it was
Yes.
signalized. I think that would solve a lot of problems.
So,
and maybe that is something that the city could raise with CCTA and Caltrans. I mean, we have a number of places where off ramps are signalized, like in downtown, the First Street exit.
So I am happy to take a recommendation from this board and forward it to Caltrans for an RRFB or a signal at this location. I'm happy to do that based on your discussion. It wouldn't be something that the city could, install basically, or install without an agreement and we pay for it and everything else. So I just wanted to clarify though that we were talking about the same location. Thank you.
That is, yeah, no, that is exactly the location. Yeah, I mean, I think that would be satisfactory.
Yeah. I don't, so Lynn, you had a question?
I so move.
Well, so the question, I think that the question is, should we just ask you to handle this administratively, and then if there's some action, you can bring it back and agendize that?
I think he needs a
Yes,
motion from the board.
Well, yeah, I can forward a request to consider an RFB or a signal at this location to Caltrans.
Okay. I don't think that we need to add, Stella, would you like to officially add that as an item or just keep it administratively handled?
I think administratively is fine. It's not something that that the city would be, it sounds like council would need to obtain funds for yet.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think, yeah, submitting the request through Caltrans and then following up from there.
So it's not a short-term action anyway.
Would they pay for it? Would Caltrans pay for it, Mike?
So Caltrans would only pay for it if they found it warranted or they felt the need for it. I'm not saying they wouldn't. And as it has been mentioned, they have signals at off ramps as well. I don't know. It would be up to their traffic engineering.
Let's ask.
Okay.
I'll bet you we could get Rachel Carpenter to go to bat for us.
Okay.
She was the president of this commission for a while. She's up in Sacramento now, in charge of the entire state of California for that section.
I want to call for, is there, Stella, do you have other items?
Few more, just a few.
Yeah.
So I'd like to add one, which is at the Accolades overflow parking lot adjacent to the East Bay mud pipeline. There's this parking area. We've discussed it briefly and we talked about, there's another item in the list to put a yellow ladder crosswalk across this driveway to this parking area. It would be wonderful if we could include a recommendation or request, I guess, to the school district to add a stop sign for people exiting the parking lot so that they don't just roll out of the lot and onto the street. It's a diagonal, it's not a perpendicular, so it's very easy for people to just kind of just float on through, and it's very high volume driveway. I think some of the other public commenters alluded to that or described it. It's also used by Springbrook Pool,
yeah,
which is at the very end of it. So it has traffic coming and going constantly, and children who are walking down the driveway to get to the pool as well.
I want to wait, hold on. I want to follow up on that item, Stella. And I had that was a question. That was a question I had also, because I think that's what Lisa Williams was talking about, was the exit there. There's no crosswalk across that exit. And if you could clarify, is there plans for a crosswalk across that exit in the current recommendations? I thought there was.
I think it's AC3.
Yes, AC3.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we thank you. I just wanted to make sure that that was something that that was to Lisa's point. Lynn?
Well, I just wondered, because I couldn't get over there this afternoon. It's been a while since I've been there. Is this the same parking lot that Tool was thinking of removing? Is this?
Oh,
no.
Not no, we didn't recommend removing any parking lots.
Not that one. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, this is the parking lot that's owned by the school district. Right. It's adjacent to the field. It's in between the field and the East Bay mud pipeline.
Okay. So yeah.
Another item. We have some radar feedback signs going in further north for Spring Hill, and I think it would be good to have them also around the Deer Hill, Stanley, Pleasant Hill Road intersection. So maybe between the Briones parking lot and the intersection going southbound. I don't know northbound. I mean, there's the off ramp that I was just talking about, Accolades Avenue, which is a road that comes out of the neighborhood to the east. So I don't know if there's a logical place for it, for a feedback sign there, but I do think definitely on the southbound side, because that is where people are just constantly trying to just get to the freeway, and giving people feedback about what their speeds actually are, I think is valuable.
Oh, I know we had talked about the feedback signs before, but I can't recall if those were in one of the items in the tool report, or is this something we should just add from scratch?
They were in Spring Hills. They were in Spring Hills report, and we did, I think, approve or recommend 2 that council approved. But they were going to go around Spring Hill Road, so further to the north. I believe probably between Spring Hill and Release Valley, and then another between Accolades and Spring Hill Road, roughly.
Okay.
So I guess I'm just proposing that at least we add another on southbound Pleasant Hill Road before the intersection. And then this one, hopefully it's pretty simple. So on Stanley, close to Camino Diablo's intersection, there's a long stretch of parking that's adjacent to the pipeline, the East Bay Mud Pipeline. And it doesn't have a shoulder striping at all. So
On the north side of the street?
On the north side of the street, yeah. So there's a red curb area right by the Accolades kind of overflow parking lot that we were discussing. Then it's parking all the way up to pretty much the stop sign. And it's just never had a parking stripe shoulder demarcation. And it seems like it would be convention to have it because it is parking. So when someone's autonomous vehicle starts driving down, they need to know that they don't queue up and behind those cars that are parked on the side of the road and wait, that it's actually not a lane. It's used by Accolades students. They park there during the school day, and then also by sometimes the swim club teams. And there is a stripe on the south side by Happy Days and the church parking lot.
Yeah, Mike.
You're on mute, Mike.
So
yeah,
I think this could be handled under AC7 where it's restriped roadway with 10-foot lanes. I know this is saying, let's see, an edge line on the north side to create a buffer between the sidewalk and vehicles, and add optional delineators. I would take that to include that. I think literally we would be looking at the striping from Pleasant Hill Road to Camino Diablo.
Okay,
and
perfect.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I think it's a good comment.
Okay, excellent. That's all I have.
Okay, yeah, Greg.
Yeah, just a comment to Stella's proposal on the radar feedback signs, because I do think we talked about this in relation to Spring Hill, and then in looking at the city council packet from April 11th, one of the items, SP 21, was replace school signs with flashing beacon school zone and radar feedback signs from Release Valley to Stanley. So I don't know then if it's been already approved.
SB.
It was SP 21 in the April 11th city council packet.
Yeah.
So, Greg, I think that included one in each direction, and so I think it covers that northbound, as Stella was saying, but it probably does not. It would not cover the southbound between Spring Hill and Deer Hill Road, if you will. It would cover. It would have one before Spring Hill Road, like up towards Release Valley Road, or even before Release Valley Road, and then for southbound as you're coming down the hill. So if I understand the request, it's to add a second one for southbound Pleasant Hill Road.
Yeah.
Closer to the freeway, closer to Deer Hill Road.
Right.
So what? Yeah, and what's the cost on those? Because it was like 32,000 was associated with that. So is that two signs or? That was a different. I mean, that was a combination sign thing. For example, the cost of the radar sign that we put on Hamlin was about $6,500, and then we added another one on Pleasant Hill Road going southbound near Olympic. So I'm just going to say, with installation, you are in the $7,000 range. Okay.
So
and so just to clarify, the SP 21 was for the flashing beacon school zone signs that are timed with a radar speedback sign component. And we have a flashing beacon sign pair, I believe, in the Accolades recommendations, don't we? Trying to find it. Yeah, AC 15.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay.
So that could, I guess, be done the same way as SP 21. Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. Sorry, Bart. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have just a quick question. On AC 11, I'm reflecting on the photographs that the one public commenter showed, where she showed both pedestrians and I believe a bicyclist walking down Stanley on the right-hand side, where there's really there's no sidewalk, no real lane to go down, but they were there anyway, and that was the concern. Would the AC 11 project, that wouldn't address where those students were walking, would it?
It doesn't cover that specific portion. Yeah, Mike, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, no, no, that's the correct answer as far as it does not put sidewalk where those students were walking, but it would push them to cross at a different location to get to a sidewalk. If you're coming from Camino Diablo, I think they're just staying on that side of the road. But if we had an extended sidewalk and then a more protected crossing with an RFB, the hope would be that we would encourage students to not walk on that middle section where there will not be a sidewalk, because we don't have really the width without a very expensive project and relocation of fences and cutting down of historic oaks and the whole bit, and retaining walls. So the idea is to extend the Camino Diablo sidewalk as far as we can, and then give you a crossing, and coming from Pleasant Hill Road, where that sidewalk ends, also give you a crossing. It's a compromise of the path of least resistance that teenagers are going to walk, because they're just going to meander the straightest line they can to get from where they're going, A to B. But maybe if they're really close to one of those two mid-block crosswalks, they'll go there instead.
So what you just described then is what AC 11 would do.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, but it would not address the sidewalk gap that will still be there on the south side. Yeah,
I understand that. Thank you.
Stella?
I just have one question about that. So there was a map image in the report of a potential mid-block crosswalk at the school entry driveway, but that one was difficult because there's no ability to easily put in a sidewalk on the south side. I'm sorry, I have completely lost train of thought in describing
well, what you just said,
what's
Stella,
on the map.
Stella, that's exactly right. Okay, the other mid-block crossing that was considered is not something staff recommends, because we cannot connect it to a sidewalk on the south side of the road. It's not that it wasn't necessarily a good place. It's that we cannot build without hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe millions of dollars, a sidewalk on this short section. So we're doing the best we can to get you close to it on either side from either direction.
Yeah, that was AC 10.
And thank you, Mike. You brought that idea back to me. What was I talking about? So I'm just wondering, when the kids are coming out of the sidewalk adjacent to the entry only driveway, is it advisable, or could there be one of those simple metal railings that you see in places that just basically, they're not very big, but they have a placard on them that says, no pedestrian crossing, use crosswalk that way? What do you think? They'd walk around it, some of them, but maybe just a little hint. I don't know. I mean, I've seen them in places like where you're, around a railroad crossing, say.
Drew or
What
Adam,
says
do you have
the,
any
I would,
comments
consultant?
on the usefulness of that?
I would leave it to Tool. I mean, I'm sure there's pros and cons. I mean, you're creating another hazard and something to hit and something for another bicyclist who's 9 years old to run into on a narrower sidewalk. So you're fighting for space there. If it's close enough, they might walk to the crosswalk. I mean, I'm hoping that these are primarily high school kids, that they would get the message, and maybe there'd be an education component even for the high school. But open to Tool's recommendation on ped barricades with the signage to direct you to a crosswalk.
I mean, they're obviously used, right? I've never seen them to be very effective, and I would guess in front of a school like this, it would be probably not effective. I think they are probably used as kind of a avoiding liability. If someone does go into that space, then someone could say, we told them not to, right? But I don't actually think they're particularly effective at getting people to do what you want them to do.
Okay, let's see.
Okay, thank you.
You got all your concerns addressed, Stella?
Yep, I did.
Is there other items that commissioners wanted to talk about on this Accolades section? Now, Mike, I wondered if you feel you've adequately captured our requests. For example, you could say on AC 15, you could add speed signs southbound Pleasant Hill Road to that one, perhaps. On AC 23, there was the idea of adding the ladder crosswalk. You know, maybe that's a place to put it. Maybe not. Maybe it's just elsewhere. Stella had some modifications to AC 7, but you feel like you've captured all of those items sufficiently?
I think so. I've got those that you just mentioned. I've got, let's see, AC3, Accolades overflow parking in addition to the ladder at a stop sign. So you said that, right? And then AC 17 is where I had add the ladder crosswalk. I've got a administrative forward request to Caltrans for an RFB or a signal. And I do have couple with the radar sign for the flashing beacon school signs.
Okay.
Was there anything that I missed?
I think that captures everything, but Stella had requested that AC 27 in the city report just be reworded. That's consider adding bike racks rather than relocating. But
I do have that as well. Thank you. Thank you for the reminder. I have that written in.
That's great.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stella?
I just have one other thing. So I know that I think one of the speakers today mentioned, and I know we've seen public comment before about concern that sidewalk adjacent to the retaining wall, which is adjacent to the field, the school playing field, is so very narrow. And so I wanted to ask Mike and Tool for their reading on the request for putting up a fence or railing alongside the roadway there.
I would say we considered that, and we made the recommendation to put the bollards actually in the roadway, because any railing that we put up is going to make that sidewalk even narrower, because it's going to need to be placed above the curb. So that's why we made the recommendation to put the flex post delineators in the roadway. So it'll move vehicles actually further away from the sidewalk, so it will make the sidewalk feel like there's more space when you're walking. So we didn't think adding a guardrail was a good idea. It's a good idea in theory, but in reality, having to take up more sidewalk space, it's not worth it. So that's why the compromise is to put the flex posts actually on the pavement.
Okay, yeah, I do recall, Mike, I think you had said the amount of the width for the guardrail is pretty significant, the amount of space you need.
If you do a real guardrail, you're over 2 feet wide, and now you have no sidewalk, basically. So, yeah. So AC 7 does address, just the flex posts, but also narrowing the width of that So, and it was shown tonight that the eastbound lane is narrow. The westbound lane is not as narrow, and that's where we can get a little buffer between our restriping of that westbound lane and the existing face of curb of the sidewalk.
Okay. The eastbound lane, the shoulder is really pretty full of vegetation, and not just plants growing into it. One parcel has plants growing into it, but another has got just a huge amount of just mulch. I think it's been coming off of their trees and accumulating. Is that something that was put in a maintenance request for, to have crews scrape the mulch and take it away?
So our crews would send a notice to the property owner to maintain their front of their yard. Basically, it's not something typically that our crews would maintain, that frontage on the south side of Stanley there.
Oh, okay. Even if it's outside of their fence.
Yes, just like you would mow the lawn all the way to the front of the curb. If you had a lawn and a sidewalk, or all the way to the sidewalk, that last part of the front yard may be in the public right of way, but it's still your lawn that you're maintaining. It's still their yard that they're maintaining. It's not.
So can you send a note to the property owners, please, on that? And then Bart.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just wondering from the sorry, just to follow up really quick from Mike. So I've seen the City of Walnut Creek street sweeper that comes through periodically. So that's not something where they could just kind of scooch over a little, because it is the city shoulder. No. Okay.
So there needs to be a curb to be more effective with the street sweeper, and that street sweeper comes through once a month. So it's not going to be effective in the season when everything's dropping off the trees. So it's just more maintenance, and it's like having a 15 square mile backyard for the city, and we've got like 6 guys, and when there's a storm, there's no way they can get everywhere. That's why we need property owners to rake their own leaves and pick up their own debris, and often it's forgotten, especially if it's outside a fence.
I want to pick. I think we're losing steam here, so I want to. If there's no, I know Bart's got his hand raised, but if there's no other items that are on the list already, let's hear what Bart has to say, and then I want to like see if we can get a vote.
I was going to make a motion.
Okay, then do so.
Adopt table 4 with the changes that have been noted.
Okay.
Second.
All right. Roll call. Bart.
Aye.
Greg.
Aye.
Stella.
Aye.
Lynn.
Aye.
And I'm an aye. So that's great. I want to thank everybody for. Oh, Lynn.
Yeah, I just have one other thought. Is it possible that we could make a motion and agree to send a letter to the city council and let me stop and insert something. We continually, year after year after year after year, depend upon engineering solutions for enforcement problems, which is too bad. We have a force. So to send a letter to the city council asking them for consistent additional enforcement that they really should be doing. Anyway, we shouldn't have to ask, but can we send it as a commission?
It's not agendized, so we can't do something from scratch. But just to say, we could talk about this in the commissioner updates, and Mike can fill us in, but the city council has been putting a lot of pressure on the police department to help increase enforcement, especially since the school programs have begun. So let's ask Mike for an update on that at that time. Okay.
I haven't seen a police officer for at least a month.
Okay, I want to close this item first. Okay, so item 5 is done. Okay, and thank you, Tool, for all of your work, and also Brooke's not here, but thanks to her also, and also all the staff work. And I know you've got a lot to do going forward on this when you take it to the city council. So thanks in advance, Mike. There's no new business, so let's move to item 7, which is commissioner and staff updates. And so I just want to follow up with Mike. Do you want to take an opportunity to discuss enforcement efforts or concerns that I know that the city council has been working on this, but do you want to address Lynn's comment?
Yeah, the city council has requested more enforcement. You know, if this commission wanted to write a letter, one of you could ask to have it put it on an agenda to discuss and to edit and whatnot, and it could be crafted and sent. I will say in this area though, one thing that we have done to try and increase transparency is it's in our weekly roundups, or like once a month, we're actually posting the statistics of traffic citations and traffic stops and so forth. We have not done that historically. I think we've only done it once or twice now, but it is a new thing. And I'm sorry, I don't have the specifics of like, is it the first week of the month or whatever, but in our weekly updates, we are publishing that. So you can read about it. I don't know if any of you have seen that in a past report recently. So that's just something that's new. And it's obviously more transparent and more out there, and open to public comment of, wow, you really didn't do much, or wow, you really did do a lot of, citations. Of course, people can look at from month to month, maybe it's changing or staying the same, or there's a spike or a decrease. And, I guess our police would have to speak to that if they receive public comment.
So Lynn, I would encourage you to send a letter to the city council. And I know that in one of the presentations, I don't know if it was the police presentation that was like several weeks ago, but I know that they talked about moving people around to increase enforcement during school hours. And so I know it's on their mind, but I think it's well worth, writing them a note. So I think, hey, why don't you take a shot at it, Lynn? And then if you want, you send it to, send it to Mike to blind copy all of us, and then we can send it to them too.
We could put it on the agenda. And I was
Okay.
thinking maybe Stella would write it. She writes beautifully.
Well, I guess we don't really need on an agenda unless we're going to get, let's say, the police chief in to talk to us, right?
So I do think that if you're working on it as a group, then it should be agendized. I think that if one of you is sending a separate letter to the council, then that's okay. But if you're going to share and back and forth, then there's, you certainly, want to do that as part of the public process.
Yeah.
So if somebody brought a draft letter forward that you could review and edit sort of as a work group, at a public meeting, that's an option, or just sending a direct letter from one of you, that's an option too. And certainly the others could view that letter at the appropriate time, because it would be, it would be correspondence to the city council, just like any other correspondence to the city council.
Would Stella write it, or Carl?
This seems to be your issue, Lynn. I think that you should draft it.
Well, normally I would like to, but I've got so much going. I've got company coming in from Holland. I'm going absolutely nuts.
Right. So I'll tell you what. Mike, do you have an idea when this school safety will be forwarded to the city council by chance?
I believe it's the first meeting in June.
Okay, so this is what we'll do. I will take it on to make a comment at that meeting that there is the continuing need for enforcement and education. Okay.
But who's going to draft a letter? Maybe Bart would draft it.
No, I'm not.
I just.
I have a question if I could. I mean, and this may be a dumb idea, but I'm going to broach it, put it out there anyway. Would it make sense for a temporary period, maybe for the next, 3 months, 6 months or whatever, to ask the police department to report to us once a month the citations that are issued within a mile or a mile and a half or some distance from each school? That way we can actually see what they're doing, and by asking them to do it, we sort of send a message that we want them to do it. Does that make sense?
I think that's an interesting idea.
Sounds good to me. You know, there was a day when we had a police officer as a liaison at every one of our meetings, always. And they would give a report and they would participate in the discussion if we wanted to.
All right. Okay, I want to move on. I want to finish this up in a second, and because I want to get to an issue that Bart had raised separately. But Stella, do you have a quick comment or a comment on this?
Just one thing. So I completely agree with Bart. I think that that would be a very, very important thing to do. I recall that we've asked in the past, maybe when Justin Horn was with us, and we're told that really the police were not able to give us any information or not willing to. So I really hope that maybe things have changed now that the council has adopted Vision Zero. And then segueing to that, I would hope that there would be, out of the maybe local road safety plan work, Vision Zero policy and plan work, that there would be a more formal component of enforcement and just what exactly the city council expects the police to be doing, both in their work of enforcing, but also in provisioning of data and information about incidents. So that was a follow-up question that I was going to ask Mike shortly, which was just, can we have an update on LRSP? But anyway, I'll hold that.
You've introduced the subject, and actually that was a good point, because some of the speakers had commented that they don't understand the Vision Zero process, and there's several elements that they mentioned, and so the LRSP was, my understanding is that was the mechanism that we were going to use to implement a Vision Zero. And maybe that's not the whole mechanism, but Mike, I know had well, you fill in on it, Mike. There was a proposal out, and you've hired a tool, wasn't it?
So we have awarded a contract actually to Tool Design Group, and thank you to Bart and Stella, who were reviewers of the RFP or of the proposals. We cannot start that until I get staff.
Yes.
And I'm told, because I need somebody to carry this from the beginning to the end. There needs to be continuity. There needs to be somebody on board. So it's the city dragging the feet, not the consultant necessarily, on this. And 2 days ago, I heard that we may have had somebody accept an offer, but I can't. I'm not going to hold my breath until they're here. I'm just going to wait until they are, and then we're going to start the process. There is no reasonable way to do that process justice with me trying to carry it. I'm just going to be honest.
No, and you mentioned that in a city council meeting, I recall. So, okay, I wanted to bring up, Bart had sent out a letter, sent a note around, and Bart, I don't know if you want to talk about it. The article was this blurred. Riding a bike in America should not be this dangerous. It was a New York Times article that you circulated. Did you want to comment on that?
Not really. It speaks for itself. It really resonated with me, and I'm sure others found it interesting.
No, I did too. So thank you for sharing that.
I did not receive that. Did you email it to us, or?
No, I was directed to send it to the city to be formally distributed as for Brown Act reasons. So I don't know why you didn't get it, Stella. I did not send it out directly to each.
I will.
Okay. Yeah.
I will forward it to you.
Don't think I did.
Stella, I'll forward it to you. Okay.
I don't think.
Okay. Would it come from Therese, or?
Yeah, from Therese. Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I don't recall seeing that, Bart. I'm sorry, I can double check, but I don't recall sending that to the commission.
Okay.
Okay.
You did not?
I thought I got it.
I don't recall.
I'll send it to you, Therese.
I didn't get it either.
Okay. All right. So the action item will be, Bart will send it to Therese, and you'll republish it. Thank you. Are there any? I know we're like, this is a late meeting. I really appreciate everybody doing it. Greg?
Just two very quick things, I hope. One, do we anticipate having a mid-month meeting in May? Or are we going to be on our standard, probably once a month meeting.
Yeah, we would not have one mid-May. Thank
Okay.
you for bringing that up.
Okay, and there's conflicts with Accolades end of school anyhow. Then the second item, Mike, this was in the tool report. It's AC2. It was mentioned in Teresa's letter to the BV residents. Is there any update or further thinking on the status of 15 miles an hour school zone process?
So I know it's been formally said at a council meeting that we wouldn't even consider it in Burton Valley till we followed through with that pilot study.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but I would say that this commission has already taken action to say we are interested in, so it's basically on cue, if you will. I can ask for that for consideration as part of this whole package as a citywide, with the notation that we wouldn't, because of the other speed humps and so forth that we already put in Burton Valley, wouldn't include it there, or we would consider at a later date if those weren't found to be effective. But I would say that TransCirc has already voted to take action, and then we discussed it would come citywide. This is now the culmination of the 7 schools, so this is the time to bring it up. So when I report this to the city council, I had intended to include the 15-mile-per-hour discussion because it is associated with this, and you have already taken action on it.
Okay, great. And that you mentioned that's likely to be the first meeting in June of the city council.
Yes, I do believe it'll be the first meeting in June.
Great.
All right. Now, Lynn, you had a comment?
Yeah, I don't remember voting on approving 15 miles per hour around all the schools. Is that what you said? Or did you say something else? What did you mean when we've already taken action on it?
You did vote as a body. It's been several months, but it was before we did these walkabouts and the tool reports and so forth. And it was packaged to come back as a citywide item rather than a school by school item.
But it hasn't come back yet, has it?
No, I mean to the city council. You have already referred it to the city council.
But we haven't approved it. We don't even know what 15 miles per hour around each school. That would be 15 miles here, 15
No, okay.
on that side, 15
So
miles.
that's a very good point. So before it would be implemented, there would have to be a process where we would map this or zone this, and I'd have to have something to show the city council where exactly we would recommend doing it, because it's 500 feet within a school zone, and we'd have to show the zones. So the first step is, would they support it?
Notify the neighborhoods. You can't pass something like this.
So Lynn, the talk before was there has to be a process where we go in and evaluate all these different areas and so forth. Directionally, we wanted to lower the speeds around schools, the actual mechanisms and where we're going to do that, it just hasn't been decided.
Yeah, if you could let me finish my sentences, I think that would help too. Thank you.
Okay, please finish.
I am.
Stella?
Yeah, I just wanted to request maybe for our next meeting, which I assume is in June, if Mike could give us an update on something I heard about through CCTA, which is Smart Signals Project, where they were going to be throwing some resources and money toward, I believe, Pleasant Hill Road signalization upgrades. I don't think I saw Mount Diablo signals on the map that I saw, but I'd love to know more about that, whatever is known, maybe next month. And then I think I'd also heard about some earmark funding that was being sought in the last month or so. And I'd also be curious with any up to that at the next meeting.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Lynn, did you feel like you finished your questions, or do you want to finish something that I might have cut you off on?
You're talking to me?
Yeah, do you have anything else you wanted to
No,
say?
no, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? All right, it's 10:02 p.m. It's been a long meeting. I appreciate everybody's persistence. And I think this is a great wrap up to our duties on this whole project. Thanks to everybody. 10:03, this meeting's adjourned.
Thank you. Good night, all.
Bye all.